this?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably do that.
Jeff was trying to get started without actually broadcasting it. So, yeah.
It was just going to be a rehearsal
Mm-hmm.
on the sly.
And look at that. We are 3 minutes early.
And look at that. You're orange again.
You know, it's when I move away from the camera, it has to like refocus.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, that's what it's doing. It's auto white balance. And then
turn off the auto white balance.
I'm going to try and find it. I don't know where that setting is. I'm looking.
Webcam setting panel, basic page.
Zoom in a little bit to make my head about the same size as everybody else's.
I shouldn't have a red nose. Now, why have I got a red nose?
Nicholas, the red-nosed host.
Yeah, I am toast. Yes,
toast. You would even say it blows.
I beg your pardon?
What?
Huh?
I don't know that
that was the
lyric.
Funny story. That was in the original lyrics, but then they decided to change it, make it more family.
Mm-hmm. Probably wisely.
True story.
So I clicked on the camera settings and I just have a picture of a camera.
Okay, well, good.
It's not helpful. I can't do anything with it.
All righty.
Well, my camera settings just crashed.
Oh no!
As I mentioned before, how much I do not like Windows.
I have, and I've added my support for that statement many times.
Now they've
sorry you out there who love it.
Yeah, it sucks. I miss my Mac.
Big Ron, hey, Big Ron, Liz Piper. That sounds familiar.
Awesome possum. Who's got the possum?
Chris Ellerby. And Greg Peterson. How's the big ass? And company, Chris. Chris might be able to come up to Louisville. I have one of my trips. I have a 2-night Louisville, not a full 2 nights, but I stay there, go fly, and then stay there again. And one of those nights, depending on when we're going to be recording that week, might have some sort of Louisville meetup.
Sounds good.
Look forward to that. Masha. And look, Glenn, look. We're on the air and it's not even 4:00 yet, Eastern time.
There you go.
Steph's got presidential skin tone.
I'm trying to fix it right now, and I really just can't find the setting here.
Don't worry about it.
We don't mind.
No, you're still beautiful.
Occasionally, I just have to get very close.
Ah!
So you can tell my face isn't orange. Not orange.
Hello, main man, Micah. Okay, where are you, Chris? I wonder something about liking him. Meetup. Okay. Hello, Colorado. No, not Colorado. Columbus. Carl. Columbus, Mississippi, and Carl in the middle of it. Okay. Well, OK City.
Yep.
Yeah, I love. Oh, that's right. We were going to get together, right, in OK City last month, and then I got rerouted or something, or got delayed or whatever. Anyway, here we go. I think we might be ready to do the show. What do y'all think?
Yes, please.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
Why is that so low? That's all the way up. Yeah, I'll just push the slider up. How about that?
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
This control panel, if you have sliders and little trim knobs, and you have to actually move them just a little bit to get them to be active. And apparently it wasn't quite active. So now I think things will be a little bit better as far as the volume is concerned. Here we go. And we already did the clapper thing before we hit the broadcast button. Liz?
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 394.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is reported on the 4th of October, 2019.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your light and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a vintage World War II plane crashes in Hartford, Connecticut, taking several lives. New information on last year's fatal mid-air refueling collision. More news, your feedback, and in today's Plane Tales, Après-moi le déluge Part 2. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 394 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger Stern, Emmy Award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins in New York City. Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we cover the latest in aviation news and answer your feedback. I am Captain Jeff in my 31st year of flying for a major legacy airline based in Atlanta, Georgia, which I like to call Acme Airlines. And I'm joined by some awesome hosts, and let's start with this one from her luxury hacienda on the Bay of Biscay in Spain's mountainous Basque Country. A doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Luxury hacienda, eh? I like the sound of that.
Yeah, looks nice.
Yeah. Yeah,
From the
it is.
video.
It's actually it's really nice. We'll get to that a little bit in just a little bit, but lovely to be with you this evening and looking forward to a great show.
We're so glad that you could make it. Take a little time out of your little whatever you're doing over there. I'm sure you're going to tell us. And also joining us from his studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAF fighter pilot, former captain for an international airline based in London, and currently one heck of a great guy. That's Captain Nick.
Thank you, Jeff. I was just thinking, it sounds like all my best years are behind me. That's for sure.
And that was the best compliment he could come up with for the future going forward.
Well, I still have what I wrote last week, and I'm not sure you actually heard what I said. I said one huge pain in the neck for his amazing wife, Jilly. Did you hear me say that last week?
No.
I don't think you did, because you didn't really have any response to that. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, I guess you didn't take offense at all to that.
No, I was probably playing with my big ass.
Well, that sounds like a personal issue.
Well, I am a great fan of the Big Ass Fan Company, so yes.
Yes, the fan company, yes, remember.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Thank you, Matt Smith from the PTUK. And thanks to all of you in the UK or on the PTUK that just finished their live recording, and it was great. Really enjoyed that. That was Carlos and Matt and Armando and a special guest host, Mila. And so for those of you who just finished watching that, welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. We'll do our best. I know we're no match for that crew, but we're going to do our best to give you a good show here today. And
we have to.
We have to. Yes, we have to try.
Live quietly at 50%.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
Good isn't 50% good. That's good to me.
Sorry.
It's glass half full, Nick. Glass half full.
Sounds good to me.
I didn't say great show.
But
Didn't mean to anyway.
Good. Just okay.
my beer is definitely more than half empty.
Uh-oh.
Might have to remedy that at some point. But before you do, let's first talk to Dr. Steph and figure out, a lot of people that are watching the video right now are saying, that does not look like your normal home studio, Steph.
No, it's not. My normal home studio is a couple thousand miles away. I'm currently in San Sebastian, Spain, here in that country. and I'm just here for vacation. So I have
Excellent.
no other agenda than that. I'm actually here with a group of folks that I know from the Charlotte area. I dragged my dad along, so he is here. And we are just going to spend the next 8 days or so kind of exploring the area and having good food and good wine and some decent weather. Today was a little bit misty all day, but apparently that happens on occasion, or regularly, I should say. And a little bit of rest, relaxation, and then not this weekend coming up, but the next weekend is the Chicago Marathon. So I'm just here to recharge a little.
Excellent. I was in Chicago on Monday night, Tuesday all day, and then left Wednesday morning. And I was expecting it to be nice and cool because it's been hot, as you know, Steph.
No.
In the Southeast.
Yeah.
It was not cool at all.
I was there 2 weekends ago. I don't know. Lost track of all days. But I did my last long run while I was there of 20 miles. And I was expecting it to be hopefully cooler than Charlotte, which it was temperature wise, but the humidity was through the roof. I ran the morning after a wedding, so I was not super hydrated, let's just say. And I managed to find a hilly part of the suburbs. So it was not a fun last long run. And I'm hoping it's going to be much cooler next weekend. We shall see. Fingers crossed.
I think it's going to be, actually. But
yeah, I think it's cooled off a lot, actually. I think it's much cooler there today.
Good.
So hopefully it sticks.
Excellent. Well, I didn't really intend to go right on into our getting to know you segment, but I did because it's just a habit pattern and I wasn't really thinking, but so we're just going to stick with it. Anything else new, Steph, before we go on to Nick?
So yeah, I should mention, got here on, day did I get here? Yesterday. Left Wednesday night, got here yesterday about mid-afternoon by the time, a couple connections and layover times in JFK and also in Madrid. Flew the A350, on the A350, I should say, with Iberia up in the business class, which was very nice. So had a lot of rest on the way over. Pretty good meal as well. And then got here, had a little bit of time to kind of wander around for a few minutes. And then we were planning on doing a Pinchos tour, which is Basque tapas and wine and whatnot, and beer, basically. And you've heard of Lisboa Nelson before?
Yeah.
He came all the way from Lisbon to hang out for the evening and join the Pinchos tour. So that was awesome. So thank you again, Nelson, for coming all this way. I actually was going on to other locations after here for the weekend. So hopefully the rest of his travels were safe and he is there now. And I did want to say thank you to him for the gift that he brought over. Hold on, I have to grab it. I have not taken it out of the, the packaging yet, but.
Oh, this is exciting.
Looks like some Portuguese wine.
Ooh, that looks like the Portuguese wine that he got for me. And if it is, it's very delicious.
Yeah, it looks wonderful. So my thanks to Nelson again. That was far too kind, sir. Had some great conversation with him last night, and yeah, good times.
Excellent. And then
the white balance is totally off on my camera again.
That's okay. It'll come back. So did you meet up with anybody else in the community this past week since the last show?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for bringing me back. The days all blur together. I can't remember which day we actually did a show here. So let's back up to last weekend. So we did our show Friday.
Yep.
Friday. Okay. So Sunday, our friend Pilot Pip, he had his recurrent training, which he does in the United States. And he decided to stop by Charlotte for about not quite 2 days on his way to training facilities in medium-sized Midwest airport area. And so he was over at my house for a while. Armando from PTUK, who lives in the area as well, came down and we spent a little bit of time out on the lake, did some paddleboarding, had a really great meal. I think Armando and Pip went flying on Monday. Unfortunately, I had to work. But I met up with them briefly over. I know.
Work.
Didn't have enough advance. Work. If I wasn't in between a couple other trips, and if I had a little more advance notice, I probably would have been able to get some time off on that day. But That wasn't going to happen on this this particular week.
You've been gone more than you've been there, I think, recently, right? No, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe
Okay,
not. Who knows? Who's counting?
Well, you're such a valuable employee. I'm sure they let it ride.
Well, I'm just taking the what's in my contract in terms of available vacation days.
There you go. Making the most of it.
Can't let those days go to waste.
Mm-mm.
And so that was great. It was great to see Pip always. Good to have Armando and his lovely bride Megan come down for a while as well. We should probably hang out more often since we live, basically on opposite sides of the same city. And then, but wait, there's more.
More?
That was Monday night. Tuesday night, Colonel Jeff was in town, so met up with him for dinner as well.
Excellent.
Charlotte layover. So yeah, it's been a packed week since I saw you guys last.
It has.
Awesome. Oh, and I did a little bit of flying on Saturday. Yeah, I was down at Skydive Carolina, and instead of jumping out of the airplanes, I had the chance to sit in the right seat of the Twin Otter for a couple of loads. So that was fun.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, had not flown that airplane before.
Nice. That's one that I haven't flown. Well, there are a lot of them I haven't flown. But yeah. Okay. Wow. A lot of stuff going on with Dr. Steph. Good to hear it.
Yeah, I'm jealous of you getting in that 350. Apart from the passenger experience, how did the jet look? And was it nice and quiet, or?
Yeah, it was. So my experience was great. It was very quiet. If anything, it was one of those flights where I almost wished it was a little bit longer because you're trying to get some sleep on a overnight red-eye flight. But it was, from seat 4A, it was very quiet. The wing and engine were way back there.
Right. Was it a 1,000 or?
No, 900.
Okay.
Very smooth. Sure, that probably had more to do with the atmospheric conditions over the Atlantic than much else, but it was a nice ride. Very comfortable.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good. So, Captain Nick, what have you been up to since our last show?
Well, my little section is going to be very quick, Jeff, because not a lot is the answer to that. Finished the lecture at Coventry, started my next plane tale, which I just finished yesterday, preparing the lecture for Boscombe Down, which I'm doing for the Royal Aeronautical Society there on Tuesday. So that luckily is a lecture I've done before, so not much involved other than making sure it runs okay. And that's it, really. I've got Jamboree on the Air meeting tomorrow. The Cub Scouts and the Scouts, I don't think you have a scouting movement in America. They have an annual Jamboree when they ever get on the airwaves with amateur radios or hams, and all the Scouts around the world try and chat to each other. So helping out with that by providing some radio equipment and some expertise. And then we're having a nice end of the season prize giving at the bowling club. We're going out to a place where we tend to gather in the middle of the town and lots to drink and hand out all the trophies. And that's it, really. And I'm already well into the next plane tale. And I've realized that I'm not going to be able to do this subject, which I'm covering in 3. It's going to have to be 4. And I was trying to work out 3 is a triplet. What's 4?
A
quadruplet.
Quadruplet.
Yeah, that's what I would have assumed, but I wasn't actually sure. A quadruplet.
You know, you kind of glossed over something there that maybe I just didn't quite understand you. You said you were doing the thing with the Scouts, and then you're going to be doing a lot of drinking. Wow, really?
No,
How old do you have to be to drink over
Those two
there?
things go hand in hand.
That's the Bowls prize giving.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bowls Club prize giving. That was the next event.
I must have been like there was a lapse of attention that I had there.
Yeah,
I thought you were
your
still
eyes
talking.
glazed over for a moment. We could see them from here.
That's the crucial part there.
We take all the boys, all the Scouts to the pub, and we have our
Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
do
that's
some ham radio stuff, and then we'll end with drinking.
Yes, exactly right.
The over 18.
Okay, I'm glad you straightened that out with me. Okay,
Good. Yeah. So that's it for me, and everything's tickety boo. Thank you.
Tickety boo. All right. Let's see. I mentioned just a little bit ago that I was on a trip in Chicago, on a layover in Chicago. Left on Monday, got there Monday evening, and then I was there all day Tuesday, and then left early morning Wednesday. And during that time, several people from the community contacted me because they looked at our APG community calendar, which you can find by going to airlinepilotguy.com/calendar. And don't forget, the apps are going away, so you need to make sure that you get that website, our website, airlinepilotguy.com, kind of what would we call that, applicationized by doing the procedure to put it on.
Appify it.
Appify. Ooh, I like that, Appify. I should probably put some directions somewhere on how to do that. But anywho,
Yeah, maybe pin it to like the top. We can pin it to the top of the Twitter page, or
yeah.
put it on.
So they looked at the calendar and saw that I was going to be in Chicago for a good period of time, and they said, "Hey, what do you think? Maybe a meetup?" And I thought, "Yeah, let's do a meetup." So we met on Tuesday midday, and I had my handy dandy recorder with me, and I made this recording. So let's take a listen. I talk about the best part of the show, or the best part of doing the Airline Pilot Guy thing, is our meetups. And here we go. I'm doing another meetup here in Chicago at Miller's Pub on Wabash and Adams in the, what would you call this area of Chicago? The South Loop or something like that? Yeah, whatever that means. And so here we are. Several people have gotten together here today on Tuesday, the 1st of October. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand the microphone to each participant in the APG Meetup show, and they're going to tell you their name and a little bit about themselves. So we're going to start with Jeff over here, right to my left.
Jeff Gebhardt is the name here, from Chicago, born and raised. I do work for a major airline, not really based in Chicago, but we have a pretty large base here in Chicago. Been with them for about 30 years now. And just enjoy working with them, traveling the world as a non-rev traveler would. And one of my hobbies, aside from working at the airline, is aviation spotting, so I can contribute that. So just enjoy listening to the podcast and everything that you guys have to offer. That's it. And we'll now hand it off to...
Hi, I'm Kylie Barron. I am sort of new in the aviation world. I don't even know where to start, really. So I have always been sort of timid about flying, but for some reason, I actually have flown a lot for somebody who doesn't like it. And so I recently decided, I guess about, it seems recent, but it was probably a year and a half ago that I was just going to get over this and learn everything I possibly could about aviation and flying and what it's like. So I came across the APG podcast and I started listening to you guys and everything that you've been saying. And then as I was listening, months go by and I'm thinking, man, this is kind of actually really cool, and I kept listening. And then finally I said, I got to do this. And so I decided to sign up for a lesson. And so I went through that. And that was even, I've just telling Jeff about this. I got finished with that lesson. I was like, I'm never doing that again. That was awful. However, kept listening to everybody, the APG community talk about just how much they loved flying and all their great experiences. And so decided to give it another shot. And after that, I've been hooked ever since. So I now have just a few hours under my belt, but I'm excited to learn more about it. And I'm excited to be part of the community.
Hi, I'm Gary Coonahan. I've been an APG listener for many years. I've met Jeff several times, and it's always been a good experience. My background in aviation is I've been a military helicopter pilot for many years, flying both active duty in Vietnam and then with the Army National Guard after that. My other career has been as a police officer, and I've done some in aviation in that, but mostly on the road. I can't think of a whole lot else to say here, but Kylie's story is really neat, and she's really an incredible person. And I'll pass it on to the next one here.
Hello, APG crew. So glad to be joining everyone for another meetup. Anytime I have the opportunity to get together with Jeff, Dana, or any other members of the APG crew, I jump at the opportunity. I'm joining the crew from Texas, so I guess I get the award for longest distance traveled for this meetup. I happened to be in town for business and saw that Jeff was in town on an overnight, so reached out to him and so glad that he was gracious enough to let me join him. My background in aviation, I'm a general aviation pilot, and I was also a flight attendant for a Delta Connection carrier. So wonderful conversations going around the table. I'm loving all of the stories, and once again, another great meetup.
And Jeff, I would be remiss if I didn't do a shout out to one of the guys, fellow friend and colleague that works with me, Scott. So Scott did want to be here, so I just want to give a shout out to Scott.
Shout out to Scott. Yay. Who's Scott?
He's one of the guys that's in the tower with me there at at Ajax.
Ajax. Shout out to Scott in the tower. You're awesome. All right. Yeah, so we're having a great time here in the mid-afternoon on a Tuesday, and lots of great conversation here. And if you ever have a chance to meet up with any of the APG crew, or you know what? It doesn't even have to involve the APG crew. If you're out there and you listen to the APG and you're an aviation geek and you want to get together with people, do it, because it's a lot of fun. So with that, let's send it back to Jeff in the studio. Well, thank you, Jeff. Sounds like you guys had a great time. And yes, David Ogden, I'm not going to invite him anymore. I'm not going to allow him to be part of any more podcasts because his voice is just so awesome.
Great it shows voice. The rest of us up. So,
yeah, it really does.
That's the end of that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? As long as he doesn't talk when we do a recording.
Yeah, he can just sit there and be quiet.
Right.
Yeah, but we all know he's got a great voice. So it would just put me off him just looking at us.
You know, I think all of those people had great voices, by the way. Yes, Steph?
Oh, no, I was just going to second his comment about, was it Kylie?
Kylie, yes.
Yeah, Great story there.
Yeah,
I love that someone listened to our show and then went out and started flying.
I didn't know that she was going to tell that. I mean, I didn't know that story. She just contacted me and said, "Are you going to have a meetup?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, we are, and please do come if you can." And you know, that was when she had the microphone and she started, and we were all at the table going, "What? Really?" That's just
superb.
Gave me goosebumps. Somebody listening to our show wasn't scared away, and
actually, shut the door, I'm getting goosebumps. Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we had a great time. I hope we can all get together again soon. And
I'd say Miller's Pub is in the loop, basically.
In the loop? Okay. I don't know. I think I was looking at something and it said something about South Loop, Wabash and Adams.
Yeah,
so it's
it's a nice restaurant.
Yeah, it is.
For a meetup.
Well, you know, when Jeff, I think, was the one that suggested the place, the Miller's Pub and Restaurant, and I was thinking, in my head popped up Miller's Ale House, which is a chain that's all over the country, and I'm thinking, no, that's not really great, but this is much better than Miller's Ale House.
It's very nice.
Yeah, very nice. We had a great time. So I love Chicago anyway, and it was a good visit. So. Again, if you want to take part in one of these meetups, you need to do a few things. At the very least, look at the calendar every now and then. Again, it's on our website. And it's also on Slack. So if you're wanting to join that group, Hillel will tell us about that at the end of the show. And what else? How else? Oh, follow us on the social meds. But we're, again, going to talk about how you can do that at the end of the show. So... that's all I had. I'm going to be leaving tomorrow morning, flying up to. I'm going to be sort of like Steph, but not quite. Nobody can compete with her. I'm going to just fly from Atlanta to Baltimore, and you know, William Cool, who is now Captain Cool, he's having a party, kind of an aviation themed party, and I missed the one that they had last year. His wife, he and his wife Susie, did a party as well. So I was bound and determined that I was going to make this one. And so I'm flying up there, going to attend the party tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, and then back on Sunday. So just a quick trip up to the Baltimore area, and it looks like I'm going to see Hillel. Just noticed that he was on the list of people that are going to attend. So,
well, I am 0 for 2 parties now, so please send my regards.
Yeah, well, we've noticed. It's something that we've made note of. Okay. And with that, I can't think of anything else, so I'm going to go ahead and hit this button right here.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
All right. The Coffee Fund is your way to support the show financially. And a couple different ways to do that. The first is the Coffee Fund Classic method. And it's basically a PayPal donation page where you can contribute to the show, either a one-time contribution or a recurring contribution. Both of ours today are recurring from Alistair Kerr and Randolph Ackerman. The other way to do it is to become a patron of our show via patreon.com. Again, details about that on the website. Since the last episode, we don't have any new producers, so that's okay. We got a great group of people over there already, our patrons, who are setting aside a certain amount per episode, and they can specify a maximum amount. So if we go crazy and do 30 shows in a month, you don't, get bankrupted. Anyway, it won't make you go broke. And let's see. Again, if you want to learn how to become part of this great group of people, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. We will too.
Stand by for news.
We start the news segment with some very, very sad news. Multiple dead after a World War II Boeing B-17 plane crashes and erupts into flames at the Bradley International Airport between Hartford, Connecticut and Springfield, Massachusetts. You'll remember my recollection on the last episode of the amazing day that I spent with Main Man Micah and Max Flight at the Auburn Lewiston Airport, where the World War II vintage planes of the Collins Foundation were assembled. Among them, B-24, B-25, P-40, P-51 was the venerable B-17 Flying Fortress. One of the first experiences we were treated to was talking to a 97-year-old tail gunner, Dick Hammond. He was a tail gunner on the B-17 during the war. And later, we got a chance to climb aboard the B-17. It was a G model, the 909, crawling around the very tight spaces inside the historical icon. The climax of the experience for me was the very candid discussion we had with its pilot, Mac McCauley. Here's a little snippet from that.
Have you flown in the Huey?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it as much fun as it looks like?
No.
No, you like the B-17 better,
Well,
huh?
I like things with wings.
What's your aviation background? How did you come to...
I grew up on an airport.
Yeah.
I've been flying old junk ever since I was a little kid. And when I retired, I thought, well, hey, met these guys at an air show one time about 21 years ago, and here I am.
Still here. Did you fly professionally, commercially, or anything?
No, not the airlines or anything like that.
Yeah,
no.
good. So living proof that you don't have to be an airline pilot, who's standing behind you right now, actually, Captain Jeff, in order to end up flying a B-17. See, Jeff, there is hope for after the airline.
Like our insurance, they don't want us having airline guys because they don't fly anymore.
Oh, I do. The airplane I fly, we still fly. Yeah,
for now.
Dog. McDonnell Douglas MD 88, MD 90.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to fly a B-17 someday?
I would love to fly a B-17 someday.
Yeah. Well, maybe you should volunteer for the Collings Foundation or something of that sort.
Yeah, I might just have to do that sometime.
It must be a blast for you to fly this aircraft.
Yeah, I fly this thing every day.
So that was the head chief pilot, or whatever you want to call, for the B-17 for the Collings Foundation. And sadly, Mac was in command of the bomber when it crashed 2 days ago at Bradley International. He was one of the 7 fatalities. I can still see his face, his smile, forever etched in my mind. So rest in peace, Mac. It was a pleasure meeting you, only for a very short time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I was just going to say, it's hard to even put into words how sad and tragic that is, but I'm so glad that you and Max and Micah had the chance to chat with him and preserve some of that, before all this happened. So.
I am too. It was a real treat for all of us to get a chance to talk to him, and he had from what I could tell, he had a very good sense of humor, great sense of humor.
Yeah,
actually.
sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, and anyway, the aircraft so they were doing the same thing when we went up to Auburn Lewiston. They took the show over it's part of their Wings of Freedom tour 2019, and they were at Bradley, and the aircraft had some people on board that were paying for getting a ride on the airplane. I think there were a handful of people that were getting free rides as a kind of a promotion and publicity. The aircraft had received clearance for departure on runway 6 at 9:45 local time in the morning. After takeoff, the aircraft made a right-hand turn. At 9:50, the aircraft contacted Bradley Tower, reported an engine 4 problem, and asked permission to land on runway 6, and that was approved. A Connecticut Airport Authority Executive Director, Kevin Dillon, said, "We observed that the aircraft was not gaining altitude. There were 13 people on board the Boeing B-17, 2 pilots, flight engineer and crew chief, and 10 passengers. Another person on the ground was injured when the plane slid off the runway and slammed into a building used to house the airport's de-icing equipment. One of the injured, who survived, is a member of the Connecticut Air National Guard, a rep for the service. I do believe that this was the gentleman that several of the news reports have pointed to that actually was a hero, was able to open up one of the escape hatches in the airplane and help save the folks that did not perish in this accident. And it's just truly sad. Many different news agencies reporting on it, lots of different pictures, and it's just so heartbreaking to see the photos. It's always heartbreaking that anytime we talk about a crash on the show and there's a loss of life, but when you have a personal connection to it, that's when it kind of makes it real.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be thousands of people around the States that know Mac Macaulay and know the crew and have looked at the aircraft, and it's just a treasure that sadly has been more or less destroyed. Perhaps they'll be able to bring the aircraft back to life. It will take a lot of work, but of course, the crew and the passengers, the loss of life is an absolute double tragedy. So,
yeah.
Luckily, these sort of things amongst these vintage aircraft are rare. It's not like he was doing a display, in which case you say, well, actually in display flying, there is quite a high level of risk. This was something relatively benign, and it sounds like a technical fault. Just my heart goes out to everyone involved, and I truly hope that we can look back on this in years to come and just with fond memories of a wonderful crew, wonderful airplane.
Yes. Yeah, and I hope it doesn't discourage the support of and fervor for these kind of vintage aircraft rides. There's a lot of people out there in the community would say, that airplane doesn't have any business being, flown. And we've had this discussion on the show before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of us kind of, believe that the experience that you have with having a real living airplane like that flying and getting a ride on it is worth the small amount of risk that you may take. So
Oh, absolutely. I'd hate for these aircraft to try to be brought up to some kind of modern safety standards. It just doesn't work. The whole point is that they are flying museums. They're living replicas of the aircraft that were flown in, just amazing conditions in the Second World War and after. I'm quite right. I think that there is a slightly raised element of risk when you're flying an aircraft at that age and that technology, but I think that is a perfectly acceptable risk. And as long as everyone knows it when they climb on board, I think there will never be any shortage of people that would love to fly on an aircraft like that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's move on to this next item. We talked about this on an earlier episode. I believe it was December of last year when a Marine Corps KC-130, an air refueling version of the 130 of the Marine Corps, was out over the, what was it, the Chinese Sea or the Japanese Sea? I'm not sure exactly where they were, but somewhere off the Japanese coast.
Yeah, they were just off the coast of Japan, yeah.
And they were doing a night training mission. And an FA-18, I guess it was a flight of two F-18s were out there practicing night air refueling. And there was an accident where one of the F-18s took out the Marine Corps KC-130. By the way, the FA-18s were also Marine Corps. And I'm not going to read some of the I guess what would you call it? The narrative from some of the folks that were inside the KC-130. They're talking about what the F-18s were doing out there, but it turns out that an inexperienced pilot, unqualified for the night air-to-air refueling, and a weapons system officer later found to have had unauthorized Ambien and over-the-counter cold medicine in his system, had just slammed their FA-18 into the back of a KC-130 during a night air refueling training exercise. Profane 11, the call sign of the second FA-18 participating in the exercise, would report watching Sumo, the 130, Sumo 41, catch fire and fly nose down into the clouds. Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Herman, 38, Major James Brophy, 36, Staff Sergeant Maximo Alexander Flores, 27, Corporal William C. Ross, 21, and Corporal Daniel E. Baker, 21, crew members of the KC-130J assigned to Marine Aerial Refueler Transport Squadron 152, died in the tragic collision. Captain Jamar F. Rezolard, I'm not sure if that's the way you pronounce his name or not, 28 years old, the pilot of the crashed FA-18 assigned to Marine All-Weather Fighter Attack Squadron 242, also perished in the crash. His weapons systems officer was the lone survivor of the mid-air collision. Let's see, the lone survivor in the tragic mid-air collision has since been released from the hospital, and Corps officials have not released the Marine's name. And so there was a big investigation, of course, on this, and it turns out that they found some safety deficiencies in the squadron, and the commander of VMFA 242, Lieutenant Colonel James Compton, was fired from his position in April before the investigation concluded due to loss of trust and confidence. And the Corps also fired the VMFA 242's executive officer, ops officer, and the aviation safety officer. So took out basically the whole top office holders in the squadron. Turns out.
I mean, you wonder. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's what I was just thinking when you read through the top of this that they were letting unqualified pilots do these types of training missions. That's not good at all.
I think to a certain extent he should have been requalifying, but I don't think he'd made sufficient contacts to call himself qualified. And I mean, this was my worst nightmare when it comes to this type of accident, that there would be found that errors had been made in command control, authorization, training, because that makes this an entirely avoidable accident, and which makes it doubly tragic.
Yes. The pilot of the FA-18 that collided with the 130, Rezolard, And his instructor had also incorrectly logged in the training and readiness system that he was qualified for night system air-to-air refueling, despite only having completed 1 of 6 required night contacts with the fuel basket of a tanker. So there was a, I don't know if it was purposeful or not, but there was an inaccuracy. He was not qualified. And also, he had flown 47 hours fewer than the 60 hours required by the Corps' aviation training and readiness logging system. So, he wasn't out there flying as much as she should have, and he frankly shouldn't have been on this mission.
No, and sadly, he didn't qualify very high in his class. So he wasn't perhaps the most gifted pilot.
Right.
So when you combine all these factors together, it was just waiting to happen. And then, of course, the flight leader called him to perform a non-standard formation move, which in a night environment with his level of experience and currency was probably a very unwise thing. And he became disoriented, I suspect, during that maneuver, way too close to the tanker to perform it, and then clobbered it. So he just, I just think, oh no, come on, guys, get a grip. And it upsets me enormously when I read this.
Yeah, me too. I knew that you would be upset by it based on your military flying experience, Nick. And it just looked to me like, I don't know if they were being egged on by the tanker crew to do something fancy or what, but apparently they did something non-standard, not briefed. And as you said, Nick, he became a little, what's the word again?
Disorientated?
Disoriented, yeah. Or disorientated, whichever. And actually pulled into the tanker when he should have pushed the other direction. So very sad.
It is hard doing night formation, doing formation in cloud, when your sensors are telling you one thing and your flight instruments and the guy in the back should be coaching you to do something else, and not to follow your instincts and to actually make sure that you are still orientated on your instruments and doing the right thing, moving the right directions, and keeping a good visual lookout to ensure that you've got fore and aft separation as well as vertical separation from the tanker when you're maneuvering. It's all part and parcel of training, and we all become adept at it after a while, but until you have to be very, very careful. So I think it's just very, very sad, and the loss of life on the tanker crew is inexcusable.
Yeah, that's one. It's a real shame. And the other thing it mentioned, which I think was just amazing to me, is that the weapons systems officer in the backseat of the FA-18 did not have an exposure or anti-exposure or whatever you call those suits. That's not the right term.
We used to call it a goon suit. I think
Uh-huh.
you guys call it a poopy suit or something.
Something like that.
And it's a rubber suit. Yeah.
It wasn't required for this because I think the water temperature has to be below 54 degrees Fahrenheit. And on this occasion it was 68, but 68 is not bath water. That's still quite cold water. And he was floating in the water for 9 hours before he was picked up by a Japanese rescue helicopter.
Yeah, I wonder if he'd managed to get in his dinghy, or whether he was just literally, because if he was 9 hours just on his life preserver, I would have thought he would have died.
Yeah.
But if he got into his dinghy, even so, that it's damn cold. Yeah. And not pleasant.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on. It's a good thing. We've been hearing a lot about the 737 and the MCAS whole debacle, and it's a good thing that nothing else is going wrong with the 737.
Anything that is got the 737 attached to it, the newspapers are just going to have a field day with it at the moment. And I feel really sorry for anyone working at Boeing right now, because they must be just feeling like they're getting hit from every quarter,
pulling their hair out.
Yep, absolutely.
Not another thing.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Boeing engineers and safety investigators are scrambling to find out how many Boeing 737 next generation NGs have cracked pickle forks. I've never heard of a pickle fork until I've heard about this issue.
Oh, I eat my pickles with one.
Well, I do have a couple of
Do you have
those
a special
upstairs.
fork for your pickles?
Yes.
Like go into the cutlery my pickle fork, please.
Okay, well, I have heard of that, I must say, but not in relation to an airplane fuselage and the airplane wing. It's the part that helps attach a plane's fuselage to its wing structure. It helps manage the stress, torque, and aerodynamic forces that bend the connection between the wings and the body of the jet. You know, we've all ridden as passengers and looked out the window, and you can see the wings kind of bending up and down, and some people kind of get freaked out by that because they think that they shouldn't do that, but they are designed to do that. Anyway, engineers designed the pickle forks to last a lifetime, at least 100 bottles of pickles. No, wait a minute. That's the wrong, more than 90,000 landings and takeoffs, a term known as flight cycles in the aviation industry. And the planes that they found some cracks in the pickle fork have only logged about 35,000. So just over a third of what it was supposed to be able to withstand. And a retired Boeing engineer who was asked to remain anonymous tells us it's unusual to have a crack in the pickle fork. It's not designed to crack that way at all, period. So they said they were happy that they found this so early in the plane service, and inspections are, now I know that Acme, I was reading on our ops page, I didn't actually read the article, but it had a little blurb about what Acme is doing and how they're going to do the inspections without suffering any service outages of the airplane. So anyway.
Well, I'm glad they spotted it, so at least they can do the inspections, and I gather the inspections aren't too complicated. I don't know how easy it is to get at this and strengthen or repair it. I think that's going to be the problem. If it's as I imagine, it's deep within the structure of the aircraft, then it ain't going to be easy.
No, I wouldn't imagine it would be. They'd have to probably take them out of service for quite a while to fix the ones that are actually need of fixing. Okay, well, at least we know that that 737 is being watched very, very carefully because of all the issues with the MAX. So, and by the way, it's this article here from I believe the Seattle Times or Como News, KOMO News.com, said that this issue does not affect any 737 MAX airplanes or the P-8 Poseidon, which is the Navy's submarine mission warfare, anti-war, whatever it is. What do you call it?
They have a submarine. 737?
They have a submarine.
We'll try that again. The Navy's
anti-submarine warfare maritime patrol aircraft.
Mission. Yeah, it's like what the P-3.
The 737 just under the surface of the water with the tail sticking out like a shark.
It's a replacement for the P-3. Leave me alone. Darn it! I knew I shouldn't have read that. Oh well.
Yeah, but basically, you were getting the point you were getting at, just the next generation 737, the NG.
Exactly. Not including the MAX or the Poseidon. There's another part of this that says that a crack like this is similar to what you see in a crack in a coffee cup handle. The retired engineer tells us you can likely continue using the cup several more times, but there's always a risk that the handle will break off and hot coffee will wind up in your lap. Well, we don't want the handles of these airplanes breaking off.
No.
In other words, wings. Yeah.
I have to look up and see what, I wonder if I can find pictures of what this pickle fork looks like. So I'm just imagining like a turkey wishbone, basically, or,
That's not
I don't know why.
Metaphor.
Probably not
because those break really easily, don't they?
I know. Yeah.
And you're supposed to be able to make a wish if you have one that breaks.
My mind when I read the name of the thing and the problem they're having with it, I was like, oh, that sounds like.
Well, Nick, when the pickle fork breaks, your wish at that moment is that I wish I had a parachute. Okay. Bam. Yeah.
Well, Steph is going to be flying around with her parachute with her, I think, from now.
Yeah, just all the time. Not taking any.
Speaking of parachutes, did you see the video, Steph, of the two hang glider parachute guys? That were,
I did see that.
Oh my gosh.
And they're insane.
Yeah.
That's just not.
That was crazy.
In my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Item D in the news folder. Michael Bisgrove jailed for aiming laser into plane. And the lives of 180 passengers and crew on board a Boeing 737, there it is again, were endangered when a man aimed a laser beam into the cockpit. And oh yeah, thank you, Liz, our producer in the background, is directing me, and I'm supposed to play something that would be appropriate for this. So let me find it. Where is it? Oh, I don't see it. I'll cut all this out. Don't worry. Here we go. I'm going to start this whole over. Yeah. Bad boys. We got a couple of them here in this news item. The first, Michael Bisgrove. And by the way, if you watch the video, you will see Captain Nick doing something very naughty. This is what this gentleman did, or I use that term.
HR has taken notes and will be issuing appropriate
because I was kind of momentarily blinded. I don't know about you.
No,
anyway.
my screen on my mobile studio here is so tiny. There's no chance for any harm.
Anyway, he was shining a laser beam into the cockpit of a 737, and it was a TUI, or do you call it TUI or TUI?
I think TUI is the general nickname.
Dazzling the pilot. Ooh, dazzling. And crew as they came into land at Cardiff Airport in April 2018. When a police helicopter searched for him, he shined the laser into the eyes of the 3-man helicopter crew, putting their lives at risk.
So he's a smart guy.
No, he's not. He was jailed or given a sentence of 32 months. Yay, finally some powerful punishment for this stupid act. And let's see. We also have another one. Let's see, or is this still part of the same story? Yeah. Let me continue with this one then. Captain Robin Small was flying the Boeing 737 when a laser beam shined through the front window of the cockpit. The dazzling light caused Captain Small and his crew difficulty when it shined into the cockpit for about a minute. And it could have caused a catastrophe, they say. And it was just a 15-centimeter long laser pin with a zoom and 5-kilometer range, only costing £5. Wow. Seems like they'd be more expensive than that.
It doesn't really matter how much it costs.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, a bullet costs very little. You can do an awful lot of damage with one.
True.
That is very true. Yeah. No, some of them, they really don't cost very much. So.
Well, you also remember we talked about this, an episode of More Stupidity. This one happened in Melbourne, Australia, in October of 2016, and Paul Sant, a former baggage handler, made hoax calls to air traffic control and aircraft. They heard from him, 19 years old at the time, had behavioral issues from the age of 3, came from a dysfunctional family, and had been living in state-run residential care since the age of 14. He also has Asperger's syndrome. He had previously pleaded guilty to 3 charges: endangering the safety of an aircraft in flight, transmitting a false Mayday call, knowing it was likely to endanger the safety of another person, and interfering with radio communications. Mr. Sant had lost his job at Virgin Australia as a baggage handler, but had continued to put on his uniform and pretend to go to work. I know a lot of people that put on uniforms and pretend to go to work too. Anyway, he made a series of bogus calls in October of 2016. He instructed VA 1371 to abort a takeoff. It was actually a landing. At approximately 15:47 on the 25th of October, air traffic control alerted the crew it was a hoax, and the flight landed as normal. A go-around call was made to another aircraft, and ATC immediately alerted the crew that that was also a hoax. And several of these listed happened that way, but there was one that I guess ATC didn't have a chance to tell the crew that it was a hoax, and they actually executed a go-around. And as a result, the aircraft breached the 3 nautical mile separation zone between aircraft, coming within 1.8 nautical miles of, was it JQ? Is that Jet Airways or something like that? I'm not sure. JQ 740. They were preparing to take off. The prosecutor told the court The similarity of the Virgin and Jetstar. Oh, Jetstar. There we go. Call signs caused extra confusion. So, it wasn't just wow. I don't know what happened there. Am I having a stroke?
Right there.
Is my
I'm slightly concerned.
Okay.
I'll continue to monitor, but I'm a little ways away from you. So
Thank you.
anyways,
I'm gonna take my pulse.
closer to yeah.
So, in the courtroom, the judge noted his Asperger's didn't reduce his moral culpability. The judge also told him his actions were dangerous and that could have had terrifying, perhaps fatal consequences. Such behavior is totally unacceptable. You may have been young, you may have thought it was just funny, just silly, but the potential for real, serious, and significant harm, way beyond what you might have contemplated, was very real. And the seriousness of the offending must be marked by the imposition of a term of imprisonment. So he sentenced Mr. Sant to 2 years imprisonment, but released him on recognizance release order. So in other words, I guess he doesn't have to actually go to jail for 2 years. He's just going to be, I guess, what we'd call here in the States on probation, I guess.
Yeah, well, we have a similar thing. If as long as you keep your nose clean, then that goes away. But if you do anything in that period, then you go into jail and serve your full sentence.
So at least 2 instances, positive instances of people, being stupid out there getting punished for it. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's nice that we're finding out about these, because hopefully that will act as a greater deterrent for anyone who's thinking that it would be a good jape to do something similar.
Yeah, I hope that it's widely reported so that people actually pay attention to it. Did you see this? I was, I mentioned I was at in Chicago at Chicago O'Hare International Airport.
I didn't see it in person. I saw the video.
Well,
Yeah,
so
the video is incredible.
there was a video online and all the social medias and stuff. And this is an audio program, so I really can't show you the video, although we'll have a link to it in the show notes. But let me just play a little bit of the audio of this, and you can hear what's going on. So this beverage cart is going around and around, and one of the people on the ground finds a tow bar ooh, there we go. Knocked it over. I wish I'd made that sound effect a little bit longer because I needed to say more, but you get the idea. That wasn't actually the sound from that. Although if you look at, just think of that when you're watching the video.
Yes.
A motorized baggage, not baggage, a beverage cart. I've never seen one of these things before, but apparently a case of water bottles somehow got bumped off the seat and fell down onto the floor and pushed or engaged the accelerator of the thing. And I guess it wasn't chalked, or if it was, it jumped the chocks, and it just starts going around in circles in reverse on the ramp. And somebody in the terminal is taking a video of this. And
yeah, it was dispensing drinks to everybody.
It was.
It really was. There's like
everywhere.
throwing stuff all over the place.
Anyone want a drink? Have one of these.
And it keeps, and it's doing its circles, in reverse, round and round, and everybody's just kind of standing looking like, what are we going to do? How are we going to? You could tell it was like, you could almost see the little thought bubbles, like, I'm going to jump in somehow and
there was
stop this thing.
Yeah, there were like every time it came around, they were kind of like,
no, that's not going to work. I'm going to die if I do that.
But you could tell that the circles were getting closer and closer to this Embraer.
It was moving,
And I guess the guy that was a hero in this, his name is Jorge Manalang, or George. I guess I'd say Jorge probably, right? Jorge. I think he was toward the back of this Embraer aircraft, and he comes running up, and then he goes, I have a solution. And I don't know if he said that out loud, but he got on the little electric tug thing, not a regular size tug, but almost like a floor jack. It looks like it just picks up the nose wheel of the airplane, and he just kind of drives it right over there, right in the perfect place to stop the motorized beverage cart from doing any harm.
Yeah, he flipped it neatly onto its back, like turning a tortoise upside down. It just sat there waving its wheels in the air.
Yes, exactly.
It still hadn't stopped. Just
so good job,
Yeah, great job. Because if that had whacked into the aircraft, there would have been a lot of damage.
Oh yeah.
Very expensive. Yeah.
Oh, very, very. Yes.
Should mention the airline Envoy, an American Airlines feeder airline.
Subsidiary. Yep.
Subsidiary, yes. And so they are, and he's a ramp instructor, and he instructed everybody that day what to do in a situation like that.
Exactly
Not
right.
that it's going to happen again anytime soon, but just in case. And the airline's very proud of him and will reward him in some way. So that's pretty cool. It was
Yes, they'll
fun.
probably give him a case of drinks.
Yeah. You can have all of those beverages that spilled out onto the ramp.
Wow. What a reward.
No. Something much nicer, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Hope he gets a nice bonus. Maybe get half the money that he saved the airline from having to spend on fixing that. That would be a lot of money.
That would be a healthy bonus, definitely.
That would.
Speaking of videos, here's another video, and wow, according to what I was reading here, it looks like it shows an engine on a wing, the left engine on a United Airlines. Is this another 737?
No.
I'm not sure what. It doesn't say what type, but it's got to be a 737, obviously. United Flight 293, and here it says that the terrifying video shows the airplane appearing to violently, or the engine appearing to violently shake up and down while the vehicle flies through the sky. Well, no, it was not the engine that was violently shaking up and down, but it was the cowling, the engine cover on the outside of the engine.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an engine malfunction because that the cowling is part of the proper functioning of an engine, and so they had to return to Denver. And anyway, so there's a pretty good, kind of blurry video, the one that I have anyway, of this.
And vertical.
Yeah, well, we're used to that now.
Stuff.
That's normal. I'm going to start, just putting my big screen TVs in a vertical
orientation. So you can
Probably a good idea. Yep.
I've given up. I don't think Nev has yet, but
no. You will fight till the end on that one.
Liz tells us it was a 737-800. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Probably has a cracked pickle fork too.
Oh boy.
Sure it does now after that cowling is flapping.
Oh
around.
yeah.
Right, after all that vibrating.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if this is one of those instances where they were doing some work on the engine and somebody just missed the fact that everything wasn't latched. Who knows? I don't know.
It's quite likely.
Yeah.
We went through a bunch of those on the Airbus recently. A year or two ago. Now it's checked every time in the walk around and even has to be filled into the tech log if you've done engine work to confirm the latches are closed. And that's the only way to make sure that these things are done. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward thing. If you open your bonnet on your car, you close it. Otherwise, it's likely to get very noisy when you drive down the road. It's hard to see where you're going.
Now, the bonnet is the one that's in front where the engine is?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So we call the hood. Yeah, so it can also obstruct your vision as well. That's not a lot of fun when you're driving
it's very hard
quickly
to
down
see through one of those.
Yes.
I had that happen to a girl I knew in school.
Did she survive?
Yeah.
Was there any terrifying video from it?
No. And if there was, I'm sure it would have been in vertical video mode. But
I'm sure.
it was before that. It was actually probably before cell phone cameras were really. But anyway, I don't think
back in the good old days.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally in our news folder, so we talked about we've talked about the 737 MCAS, and we mentioned, I believe, that Steph was going to be meeting with Colonel Jeff, as she told us in the intro, and I guess we said we should ask him about this, and he obliged and recorded some audio. And so let's hear from Jeff and what he has to say about this whole thing.
Hello there, APG. Colonel Falmouth here, sending feedback about episode 393 and the discussion that Nick and Jeff had about 737 MCAS training and things like that. Let me preface this with some MCAS issues. The MCAS cannot engage unless the autopilot is turned off the autopilot not on, and the flaps are fully retracted. So the MCAS will not operate if the flaps are down or if the autopilot is on. It was designed to recover the airplane from a very narrow, tiny portion of the flight envelope to counteract the pitch up moment of the new engines, which are further forward and much larger and more powerful than the previous versions of the engine in a low speed environment. So I'll continue. Some other things that were brought up is that in both instances, the crews at Lion Air and Ethiopian had the stick shaker and the overspeed warning going on at the same time. Yes, it's confusing. The airplane's telling you you're about to stall. At the same time, it's telling you you're going way too fast. It kind of sounds like Air France 447, but for a different reason. Neither one of those can be silenced. Neither one of those can be stopped unless you get out of that situation, which these guys would not be able to do with the failures that they had. The problem with losing an AOA vane or an indicator on the 737 is the AOA feeds directly into our air data computer, which on the 737 is much more complicated than a simple air data computer because it takes inputs from a lot of other sources, and it is known as an ADARU. I've had one of these fail. It gave me inaccurate airspeed, inaccurate altitude indications on one side of the cockpit, so it can be a little bit disconcerting. So that kind of causes part of the problem there too. One of the things they alluded to before I get into the meat of this is that political correctness issue in the reports. The sources I have, which are pretty reliable, are indicating that that is going to be a player in how these reports are worded. Now, to get to the meat of this, one of the things that Nick talks about is there's just flat too many bells and whistles going off all at the same time. You have multiple failure indications all going off at the same time. Having experienced this for real on a 757, it can be disconcerting. One night we took off. Fortunately, it was a three-man crew. I was the third guy sitting in the middle. And as we took off into the clouds in icing conditions, the center screen on the 757 turned into a Christmas tree. There were more white, yellow, and blue lights on that screen than I'd ever seen before. And they weren't on very long. As soon as the weight was off the wheels, they all came on. And it was everything from indications that our weight on wheel system no longer worked to that none of our anti-icing systems worked as we entered the icing conditions after takeoff. They all went away just as soon as the gear handle went up. But it was quickly obvious that I could not read all those lights as quickly as I needed to because I couldn't tell you what most of them said. Nick talks about somehow we need to come up with a system that prioritizes what the pilot sees as what's the most important. I think that would take a very advanced computer system, probably at the artificial intelligence level, because no two emergencies are alike. No two failures are alike. I've had two different situations with fuel leaks in the F-15, and they were both significantly different. An engine fire on one aircraft is different than an engine fire on another aircraft of the same type. Flight control malfunctions are different pretty much every time. So it would have to be a pretty smart system. The next thing they talked about is this nebulous term airmanship. I don't particularly like that term. I think of it more, and Nick will understand this probably better than Jeff will, is situational awareness.
I think
Did we
stopped
lose
and-
the audio? We also lost Jeff.
Yeah, I saw him step away for a moment, and now he's
Yeah, but-
disappeared.
He's I don't even know if we can put ourselves back on. So I don't know if anyone can actually see us because we're just got like the audio.
Yeah, they'll probably hear us. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. So
Like
stand by. We don't know what's going on yet.
He'll be back, I'm sure. He'll be back.
Yeah. Just wait.
So, what's Spanish ice cream like? Is it good?
I had some pistachio gelato, which is my
Time.
favorite type
The
of
kind of
gelato.
flying that Nick and I did is completely different than the kind of flying that Jeff has done over his 25 plus long year military commercial aviation career. Jeff's background is primarily straight and level, flying transport category aircraft, either with cargo or passengers on board. Aside from his stint as an instructor in the Air Force, he really hasn't done a lot of yanking and banking and flying upside down. Whereas that was Nick and I's livelihood. That's where we were making our bread and butter. Pretty much every sortie, every hour, more. And Nick will understand his.
Obviously, he hasn't flown with me on an airliner.
That's how you handle the all that hand flying you do in the Mad Dog. It's a lot of
Yeah, it's a lot of yanking and banking and flying upside
a
down.
lot of upside down. Yeah, aerobatic.
Yeah.
Got it.
And not spilling the champagne.
Exactly. It takes special skill. Okay, so now I understand that if I take myself out of the stream, it takes out anything that I'm happen to be playing out of the stream as well.
Yeah.
Sorry
Probably
about
should
that.
do that.
I just all of a sudden I see all these comments. Jeff, what's happening? I hear Colonel Jeff just fine over here in my little studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We
So-
were having a little private conversation here going.
But when you like this with the audio feedback tile up, I don't think can people see us on the sides here, or
Yeah.
is that just for us to see? Oh,
Nope, they can see whatever you're seeing right there. That's
I
what
must
everybody
stop
else is
making
seeing.
rude signs then.
So I was, I thought I'd go ahead and like eat a little snack. Some, the Swiss hole, the holes in the Swiss cheese are lining up in my mouth.
Good idea. Yeah.
And I thought, you don't want to see that. Well, let me just turn off the
Well,
video.
in case they line up, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Easy,
so
a
I
bunch of
removed
pieces.
myself from the stream.
lined up those holes just nicely and dropped all the audio.
There we go.
Got it.
That's exactly why. All right, so should I start from the beginning or what point did I?
Feed it in halfway through, you'll be all right.
How long?
Yeah, it's
It's
11
about
minutes.
halfway.
That's a long.
Oh, yeah, maybe
long
start.
feedback.
We're probably 5 minutes in, no, at least.
Um,
Maybe not quite. I don't know.
I'm going to start about the 3-minute mark.
Okay.
Let's see what it says.
But it was quickly obvious that I could not read all those lights as quickly as I needed to.
Have you heard that yet? Maybe
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
just talking about the 757 and
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just we'll start from here. How about? So I guess Liz just knock about 5 minutes off or something like that. All right, here we go.
I think that would take a very advanced computer system, probably at the artificial intelligence level, because no two emergencies are alike. No two failures are alike. I've had two different situations with fuel leaks in the F-15, and they were both significantly different. An engine fire on one aircraft is different than an engine fire on another aircraft of the same type. Flight control malfunctions are different pretty much every time. So it would have to be a pretty smart system. The next thing they talked about is this nebulous term, airmanship. I don't particularly like that term. I think of it more, and Nick will understand this probably better than Jeff will, is situational awareness, which all goes back to training, I think. Situational awareness is that idea of you know everything, or you think you know everything. You're aware of everything from what's going on around you on the radio to on the instruments to outside the aircraft, whether you're flying or taxiing, whatever. It's kind of like, when you're driving down the highway, you ever see that person in your rearview mirror who's gaining on you in capital letters, and he slams on the brakes as he gets right on your bumper. Then you can look back there and he checks. That's when he checks his rearview mirror to see if he can pass you. That is lack of situational awareness. So that comes into play. Experience, though, is another very nebulous term. Hours do not translate into experience. Nick talks about his 4,700 hours in the military, and I can relate to that. It's all fighter time. The kind of flying that Nick and I did is completely different than the kind of flying that Jeff has done over his 25 plus long year military commercial aviation career. Jeff's background is primarily straight and level, flying transport category aircraft, either with cargo or passengers on board. Aside from his stint as an instructor in the Air Force, he really hasn't done a lot of yanking and banking and flying upside down. Whereas that was Nick and I's livelihood. That's where we were making our bread and butter. Pretty much every sortie, every hour of our flight time involved multiple G's, multiple turns, single seat, or one pilot, one navigator operations. And it's a different type of flying. It's a different awareness of what's going on. And it's a different level of training. Nick and I had to know the airplane like the back of our hand. You had to know, if this system failed, what can I still fight with, or what can I get out of the fight with? We had to understand everything from a combat perspective. So that kind of training, that kind of experience, although it's a lot fewer hours than a guy flying, for example, my peers graduate from 20 years in the service with like 20,000 hours in a C-141. Well, I graduate from the Air Force 20 years with like 4,000 hours in an F-15 or fighter time. It's not the same level of experience. I'm not less experienced because I have few hours. I'm probably at least as experienced, if not more experienced, than the guy with 20,000 hours, because most of his time is straight and level with the autopilot on. So there's those situations. There's a big difference between the guy with 1,500 hours for his ATP, where a lot of that time was flying survey work, versus the guy who got a lot of his 1,500 hours flying night checks, bank checks at night in the Rocky Mountains. So that's training is training, and experience is different. The last thing I'll address is the trim wheel. And Nick is correct. The trim wheel on the 737 is not operable in all regimes of the envelope. There are times where, and I'm going to get to check this out for real next month when I go down to training. The trim wheel has gotten significantly smaller from the Dash 100 to the Max. I do not know how much smaller it is, but from the pictures I've seen, it's quite a bit different. And Jeff even mentioned one podcast, the size of the trim wheel on the 7.2 is much bigger than it is on the 7.3. I use the 7.3 trim wheel all the time, even with the trim on. I've never turned the trim off on the 7.3, but it's very easy to move. I use it to fine tune the trim when I'm hand flying, because the electric trim, it's too big a burst. No matter how lightly you tap it, it gives you too much trim for fine tuning the trim. So when I go down to the simulator in November, I'm going to purposely put the aircraft in a very nose forward trim position, nose down trim position, turn off the electric trim, and then try to move the trim wheel to at different air speeds to see how difficult that is going to be and how exactly we're going to do that. And if this presents itself to me in the future. One of the things they used to do in the 7.3 training, this is a long time ago, and I kind of expect this to come back when they ever decide to figure out what the training is going to be on the Max, is we used to do what's called a roller coaster, where you would get in the airplane and you'd purposely put the aircraft in a full nose down trim position, and then you would have to pull back as hard as you turn, and the electric trim is turned off. You would have to pull back to get the nose up in the air to ease back and now slowly let the nose fall to ease the aerodynamic loads on the elevator so you can move the trim wheel. So it was a known problem even when they first had the Dash 100s. This is not something unique to the Max or the NG. It's probably more aggravated by the length of the airplane and the fact that the engines are farther forward, giving a more significant nose-up pitch. I thought it was a great discussion. I agree with Nick. I don't think that pilot training, or not pilot training, but the pilot should be thrown under the bus. They are a victim of their own training. Whether they got good training or bad training, that's other people decide, not for me. I do believe that in some ways our 1,500-hour ATP requirement in the United States is ridiculous, because it's not the hours, like I said before, it's the experience level. And it's changed dramatically. When I was hired at the regional back in 1999, the minimum to get hired there was 250 hours of multi-engine time. Within a couple years, that fell down to 250 total hours. And that was before the Colgan Air and the change in the requirements. So now it's 1,500 hours for a civilian coming right out of school to get their ATP to come to the airlines. So again, it was a great discussion. I hope this kind of fills in some of the blanks. And any more questions, I will be glad to answer them. Take care and God bless.
Well, thanks, Colonel Jeff, for your insight. I will say something. If it's true that mechanical trim, that backup trim system that we've been talking about, cannot trim the airplane in all of the normal flight regimes, then I think that the entire 737 fleet should be grounded, every single one of them, because you have to design an airplane that even shortly after takeoff, you get a runaway trim situation. You should be able to counteract it with mechanical trim, a backup. You cannot have a Part 121 airplane certified to fly hundreds of passengers and not be able to, suffer a failure of the stabilizer trim system. That's my opinion. I'd be very, very surprised if that's really truly the case. But now we're talking about within the normally designed flight regime, not extraneous circumstances that we've talked about before. In fact, I think we just mentioned that on the last show. I also disagree with you regarding airmanship and it being nebulous. I think that a high state of situational awareness is a part of airmanship, but it's not the same thing. In fact, let me read this quote from Redefining Airmanship by Tony Kern, 1996. Airmanship is the consistent use of good judgment and well-developed skills to accomplish flight objectives. This consistency is founded on a cornerstone of uncompromising flight discipline and is developed through systematic skill acquisition and proficiency. A high state of situational awareness completes the airmanship picture and is obtained through knowledge of oneself, aircraft, environment, team, and risk. And I'll add to that, he didn't say this, that airmanship and skill, flying skill and everything else, it doesn't matter, what we're flying, what regime we're flying. It all requires that kind of airmanship to safely fly these things. You have to know the machine you're flying. Just because I flew transport category and airliners for most of my 38 year career doesn't mean that I don't have to know the airplane just as well as any other airplane, in my opinion. And as far as the experience and flying time and that kind of thing, the aftermath of the Colgan 4507 and the 1,500 hour rule, which Jeff thinks is ridiculous. What I'll say about that is it's not a be all end all solution to this big picture, but it is a factor in trying to hire the best qualified to fly passengers. All else being the same, if I had to choose a new hire pilot to fly with who has more experience in the cockpit rather than one who has little to none, I would pick the one who is better looking.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. So no, seriously speaking, if everything else is the same, but you have more, even if it's just flying survey, doing the survey things, as we know several people in our community do, whatever it is, it's still time in an airplane. It may not be yanking and banking, pulling 5 or 6 Gs and doing, advanced combat maneuvering, but it's still flying, and it's better than not having that experience, in my opinion. So that's just
I agree with you. I think it's better than having no experience at all. I think Jeff's point is the same that I probably felt when I moved out of the military into the civil world. People looked at my 4,750 hours and went, "Well, you haven't got much experience."
Well, I think you're wrong about that. I think that most people, maybe you feel that for some reason. I don't know if anybody has ever actually said that to you, but I think that people understand that when you come out of the military and you're flying fast jets or whatever type of airplane where you're not, getting a lot of hours, for the first 2 years of my military flying, I was flying transports and getting a lot of hours. I logged over 1,000 hours in that 2 year period flying the 141. And then the next little over 1,000 hours that I got was the next 5 years flying a T-37 trainer jet at 1.3 hours a sortie. So I understand that somebody that has your experience or Jeff's experience, your 4,000 hours to me is like having 15, 20,000 hours. I mean, there's a factor in there. And I think that I'm not the only one that believes that. I think that probably everybody that flies.
You're also ex-military, so you had more exposure to that. I met an awful lot of civil pilots who really had no clue, absolutely no idea what you do in the military.
Yeah.
They had no idea of the type of flying and how much you fit into the average day. And the fact that actually getting over 4,000 hours or just getting 1,000 hours on type was a considerable hurdle, and you'd be considered very experienced. They just had no concept of that.
Where does that come up into the conversation?
Well, it comes up on
ever having a conversation like this.
Well, Jeff was talking about the type of flying. He's saying you 1,500 hours flying straight and level is one thing. 1,500 hours doing a different kind of a job, say a military flying job, gives you a vastly different level of experience. So I think he was comparing flying straight and level in an airliner with military flying, which is often a completely different type. And those two levels of experience, those numbers of hours, can't be compared.
Well, I think everybody understands that.
I think you do.
Well,
I don't think everybody
okay,
does.
I'm sorry. At this moment that people are listening to us now understand that. I'm just trying to grasp how does that come up in conversations? How many hours did you get in the Air Force, Nick? Nobody ever asked me how many hours I logged in the Air Force. I'm just trying to understand how does that come up in the conversation when you're flying with somebody and how many.
Well, for example, it comes up in the hours where you're required to do a command course, for example.
I think maybe it comes up more in maybe not at the level that you are at now, Jeff, or that you were at just before you retired, Nick, but perhaps, or maybe it does. So, I'm actually thinking about Colonel Jeff's recent situation, which I won't get into too many details about, but, where you're flying perhaps with someone new to the airline, who has plenty of experience, flown at, regional lots of time. But you'll notice that some of those folks come in and handle the aircraft one way, have more intuition about it, have more of a sense of what's going on, and some folks handle it not as well. So is that what you're kind of getting at, how it comes up? Like, what did you do before? How many hours did you get? Or am I?
No, I'm just, of all the conversations that in my own anecdotal experience from being a flight engineer, a first officer, and now a captain for more than half of my career, I've never once had a conversation where I asked somebody or somebody volunteered how many hours they had.
No, and I don't think that would necessarily come up. But
so I don't understand why people are being defensive about the hours that they have and how that equates to the hours that somebody that may not have the military experience.
Well, I just tried to indicate, to get a command in my company, you needed to have a minimum of 6,000 hours before you were eligible.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do 6,000 hours straight and level, and you could start a command course, or you could do 6,000 hours in the military, and they were considered the same.
Yeah, so that doesn't happen.
One example.
None. I mean, that's there. We don't have any kind of requirement, an hour requirement.
That's why I was making the point of it. So, in my environment, that has been quite an important factor.
And that makes sense. I understand your perspective when it comes to that. I don't understand Colonel Jeff's because it doesn't happen at Ajax or Acme unless I don't know. I'm just unsure as why that would be something that would be a sore point or an emphasis on.
I don't know that he was saying it was a sore point. I think it was just,
Yeah. My personal feeling is this 1,500 hour minimum you need to get a license in the States. There ought to be some structure to what you do in that 1,500 hours.
Sure.
So I think personally that if you're going to expect someone to fly 1,500 hours, they need to do something that improves their ability as a pilot. And just being in the air doesn't necessarily do that. if
Mhm.
you're going to
I
fly
think-
something, for an outfit that has difficult operating procedures, or you're going to regularly undergo additional training and pass milestones, then I think there's a great value to it. But if you're just going to rent an airplane and fly straight and level from A to B until you've got 1,500 hours, I don't think that's very valuable. And I think that's partly what he was trying to get at.
I have
Okay.
2 comments, and then we'll move on from this topic. I just really like David Ogden's comment in the chat room about, he says, I think the hours question is like your college GPA, important for getting that first job, but after that, it doesn't really matter. Kind of the same thing happens in medicine. Board scores are really important, but it's important for that first job. And then after that, it probably might not get looked at all. And that says nothing to, how good of a candidate you're going to be. It's just you've met a certain requirement for that job. And I think there's just so many other factors that go into it. We make these minimum requirements for, getting your ATP or being a captain, but that's just to make sure that people have at least some sort of foundation. There's so many other factors that go in terms of personal aptitude, how, there's a lot of people out there who work jobs just to have a job, and their level of passion for the subject matter may be different. Their level of innate skill and their level of how much they put into it in order to become more competent. I think those are all really important things that there's no good way to measure or test for any of that. So as long as we're always making, a set requirement, I think that's okay. I think that's good. You have to have some way to ensure that at least minimum skill sets are there or able to be trained. You're still going to run into problems. You can't get rid of any of that or every variable that's out there.
And and I'm sure that you've experienced the same type of thing, Nick, in your experience with the airlines, flying with people that, or maybe even in the military, but flying with people that have very low hours, very little experience. I should have turned off my phone. Sorry. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. That fly the airplane magnificently and have great crew resource management skills, etc. And then I'll fly with somebody who may have made a career of it in the military, and came out and had gobs of hours, and don't have the flying skills or the CRM skills or whatever that this brand new person had with very little experience, just flying a 172 straight and level for a lot of their flying time. So I mean, it's a big spectrum, and I've flown. You understand what I'm trying to say is how, but how do you
measure?
How do you? I mean, I know that 1,500 hours, as I said, I started off by saying it's not a be all end all kind of thing, but it's like, well, so how do you ensure that the person that you're hiring is going to be qualified to do this well in the career? I don't know.
You take the best, measurement that perhaps you have, and then you go based on your judgment of the individual, and then you hope that it works out.
Right.
And hopefully you identify any serious problems during training or during a point before which it becomes a serious problem for,
Yeah, and I would say structured training, not just building of hours, is what's important.
Exactly. And, one of the other things of the aftermath of that Colgan 4507 was the training records. And that was one of the problems with this particular incident, where the captain had a not so great history of passing check rides, or in other words, he had trouble passing check rides. And we didn't have a system in place here in the US at that time that, would be like a database, like a national database, where any airline would have access to that information. If he went from one to another airline, that they would go, wait a minute, you're telling me you're applying for our airline and you failed to, major check rides, and then that'd be a red flag. But there wasn't a system like that back then. So there were some positive things that came from it. Perhaps we can argue until we're out of breath about the 1,500 hour thing, but sadly, I think one of the things that should have been addressed and was not, and I understand there are a lot of forces out there that did not want this to happen, but this whole idea of commuting to work all the way across the country, and then starting your very long day and flying well, into the early morning hours, without any kind of rest is, that's something that should have been addressed and was not. And all you commuters out there, quit looking at me. I know they're all looking at me right now or listening to me, and they're hating me, but you know what I mean. But that you have to be responsible for your physical wellness.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Steph.
Oh no, I just said that's something that's kind of incredible to me, that at least that there's no limit on how far you would be able to commute. You must live within, and it's different in my profession. There's not a mandate you must live somewhere, but if you're on call, perhaps, if you're someone who's required to go into the hospital or see patients while you're on call, if you get a call, then you have to be, and Nick's talked about this as well, within a certain time frame of the hospital. So whether you live there or whether you can be close to there, so you can get there in a timely manner.
Yeah, I want a surgeon that's well rested.
You want someone who's fresh. Yeah, someone who's sleeping in their bed nearby when they get the call to come in at 2:00 in the morning. Not
right. It may suck for that person, but it's best for those of us he's operating on, or she's operating on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Liz is trying to push us on to one of the good parts, one of the better parts of the show, which is, of course, your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
All right. Let's start with Derek. I think this is the third try now, Derek. We're trying to get your feedback covered on the show, and ding, 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 ding. You made it this time. He says, maybe a bit late. Yeah, he was not talking about us. He's talking about himself. But just a quick bit of feedback. Towards the end of the summer, I got my aviation fix. My brother-in-law volunteers at Headcorn Aerodrome in Kent, England. He helps clients prepare for the Spitfire Joyride flights. I spent a day there watching the Spitfire take off and land several times. The flight includes views of the White Cliffs of Dover and Leeds Castle with a Victory rollback and over the airfield if the customer is still feeling okay. It was a glorious day, and my brother-in-law even managed to get me airside and sit in the cockpit. This was a great experience. I will have to save my money and maybe one day get to go up in one. This may take a few years as it costs £2,800 for a 20-minute flight. Wow, that's a lot of money.
I know, and you don't want to spend 1 minute of it with your head in the sick bag.
Oh, I know.
Just think, every time you're honking, you're going, oh my God, there's another £100.
I see you're sick, but why are you crying? Well, oh man. My brother-in-law has been up twice for free, as he has been volunteering now for several years. A dream come true. It's a beautifully positioned small airfield in the Kent countryside with always something going on. Parachutists were jumping all day, also joy rides and an American T-6 Harvard and a Tiger Moth and sometimes the Dove plane. This flies alongside the Spitfire and is a great way to get up close and take some amazing photos, and is a cheaper alternative. What's a Dove plane?
A Dove is I'm pretty sure it's a two-engined, low-wing, a small airliner, 12-seater or something.
Oh, never heard of that.
Well, just after the World War II, that kind of vintage.
Okay. Interesting. Let's see. In fact, the airfield was used by the Americans during World War II, and we've been cleaning up the trash ever since. No, he didn't say that. Operating the P-51 Mustangs. Then a week later, I spent the weekend in Bournemouth. Is that right?
Yep.
This was the 4-day air show weekend. Bournemouth is a seaside resort Nick will know. And the air show now in its 12th year is along the seafront. My in-laws live in an apartment overlooking the sea right on the cliff tops between Bournemouth and Buscombe Pier. So we get an amazing view, and it's exactly right in the center line of the show. Oh, that's cool. You get all the usual displays: Eurofighter, Typhoon, Blades Aerobatic Display Team, all ex-Red Arrow pilots, Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, Chinook helicopter. Wow, just to name a few. Perhaps, Nick, you'd like to continue with his feedback because I'm having trouble with my tongue getting tied.
I was just sending you a picture of a dove.
Oh, were you? Okay. Well, then let me continue. You even get displays at sunset and in the evening with stunning twilight pyrotechnic air displays. Also, the Tigers Army parachute display team jumping at night, glowing in the sky. It really is a great show with so much more on the ground going on as well. Approximately 800,000, is that right? Wow. Visited over the 4 days. Definitely worth a visit, and it's totally free. The only downside this year was no red arrows, as they are touring Canada and the US. As the air show is over the sea and weather permitting, they would normally do their full display. I did hear Steph saying she saw them do their full display in Canada, and she has only seen flypasts before. Steph, what did you think? They are impressive and a crowd puller. What did you think, Steph?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself there. No, it was a great show. We really loved it. It was kind of interesting because they actually opened the air show, which we were not expecting. So we were not kind of in where we thought we would really want to be position-wise to see them, ideally.
That's unusual.
Yeah, it was unusual. You know, we were expecting, some smaller stuff and some aerobatic stuff, single aircraft, small stuff. And then, we looked up and we're like, wait, are they going to start the show with the red arrows? Or is this just like a teaser? And they're like, no,
Yeah.
they're actually going to do their show. So let's go find someplace a little better to stand and watch.
You'd think they'd save the climax for the end of the show, right?
Well, they had the snowbirds in the same show. So that was the
okay.
home.
That's right. You were in Canada.
Yeah, we were in Canada. So it makes a little bit of sense, but I thought maybe they would be back to back near the end. But nope. Started off with a bang, and it was a very nice show. I definitely enjoyed it.
It's a shame you weren't a little closer, I gather.
No, I think we were certainly close enough, but we were just a little surprised. So, I'm glad we were there for the actual start of the show because if you expect the headliners to be near the end, you might not show up in time to see them.
No, that's very true. Yeah.
We have several of the people that were in my meetup or the meetup in Chicago. David Ogden, the guy with the great pipes. I'm not sure if Jeff was on earlier. I think he was Jeff Gebhardt. Yeah, he was there. And it looks like Kylie has joined us as well. Hi, Kylie.
Yeah.
Everybody loved the feedback and look forward to hearing more from you. Okay. Let's see. Derek ends with, thanks again, guys, for the great shows that just keep on coming. Is that a criticism or a compliment?
You should never stop.
You can't get rid of us, Derek. Yeah. And you can't, unfortunately, stop listening and or watching either. So I don't know.
Oh, I've seen this. Nick sent me via private chat a picture of the Dove. And I've seen that airplane before. Yeah, cool. Just didn't know what it was called. Okay. Item 2, Dixon. Hello, APG crew. Hope you are all doing well. To be honest, I haven't had a time to key in to as many episodes as I would like to, but that is due to what I'm writing to you all about today. On APG 374, Ramp Rat Life Hacks, you all helped answer some of my questions as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed new ramp agent. 4 months have passed since I wrote that message, and I thought I would pop in an update and update you on what has undoubtedly been the best summer I've ever spent. First off, I appreciate the advice, Dana, specifically the knee pad advice. You are not kidding about how badly those pits will bang up your knees. I've decided to treat myself and upgrade my standard issue knee pads to some heavy duty ones because Airbus and Boeing certainly did not take our shins into consideration when they designed their aircraft.
Hang on a minute. I've watched people load my Airbus and they just stand there with a little box of electronics and they twiddle it and they shuffle all the cargo things around. They spin them about. They roll them down the... I mean, I don't understand. What's this?
Typical wide body pilot.
Is there some other kind of airplane?
Yeah, there are actually.
Yeah.
That's stuff.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah, or you have to.
Maybe now that you're retired, you'll be a passenger on a few of them, and you can take a peek out the window and see what's going on while your bags are being loaded.
I'd rather not. I'd rather be close to the aisles.
Yeah, it's
drinks cart.
It's best not to watch what happens to your luggage sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Keep those window shades down. It's better that you just not see it.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's fine. That was a good interruption. Definitely worth it. If anyone else out there has ever considered trying a ramp job just for the sake of trying it, do it. I had originally taken this job because I had always wanted to since I was a kid, and I thought that this would be a short-term thing that I would be ready to drop by the end of the summer. But lo and behold, 4 months later, and I'm a full-fledged crew chief. It seems surreal and, to be honest, weird to think that before I'm legally old enough to drink a beer, I'm being tasked with overseeing the arrival, offload, onload, and departure of a multi-million-dollar commercial airliner. Just the other week, in fact, I was able to cross something off my bucket list and push back a 737. My mother always tells me how enamored with the pushbacks I was as a little one, so it is fantastic to be able to say that I finally did it. Coming into this fall, my job helped me realize how much of a fit aviation was for me, and I actually ended up switching majors at the dawn of this fall semester. So starting in the spring, I will no longer be a business student, but an aeronautical science student at MTSU in their professional pilot program. I guess that's Middle Tennessee
Yep, he says it
State
later on, Middle Tennessee
Oh,
State
okay.
University. Mhm.
Who'd have thought that signing up for a job to make a little extra money over the summer would end up with such a major life decision being made? I certainly didn't, that's for sure. And hey, with Middle Tennessee State University's affiliation with the Acme Pipeline program, who knows? I may be able to thank some of you in person for helping me embark on my biggest journey yet. Thanks for the fantastic work you all do on this podcast, and keep it up. Let me know if any of you plan on swinging by Nashville anytime soon so I can say hello. Yours, Dixon.
Isn't that great? That sounds fantastic. So nice to hear that he's getting on so well. And explain to me what that is. You can go through university and become a pilot.
I think that, if he ends up going through he says he's going to do the professional pilot program. Yeah, we have several, many of the major airlines have made deals or affiliations or whatever, making it easier for pilots within their program to meet certain standards and then kind of get into a pipeline where they are given maybe some preferential treatment as far as
like instructing
interviews.
jobs, and then on to interviews for the associated regional carriers, and then some even have just direct flow through programs as you upgrade into the majors.
Well, that sounds great. Well done, anyway.
Yeah.
And Dixon, well done on listening to those little voices in your head that are telling you, hey, maybe this should be my career. Because a lot of people, I think, just kind of stick with what they've been planning on doing forever, and they miss out on those opportunities to pick a career they'll be happy in. So.
By the way, is Middle Tennessee nicer than Outer Tennessee?
In general, yes.
Okay.
I don't really know what that means, but it's in the middle of the state.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Not so much the far east or the Midwest.
Not the far east nor the far west. Yeah.
Well, Hong Kong's in the far east, isn't it?
Yeah, not quite that far.
Oh, okay.
We're talking like Memphis far, like on the Mississippi River. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Bam.
That's actually west in Tennessee, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Knoxville.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's true.
Wow.
By the way, Dana's not with us today because he has been experiencing, whatever you want to call it, his recurrent training yesterday and today. And we did get word, I believe, through some private channels and maybe even here in the video chat room that he passed with flying colors. So he's just relaxing and having a beverage or two while we flail around here on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, congratulations,
Dana.
Yeah, well done for doing so well. I thought Flying Colors was an airline.
Might be. I have
be?
no
Okay.
idea what the origin of that means, but it usually means good things. He did well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good job.
All right.
Good job.
Yeah. And he's going to tell us all about it, I'm sure, next time he's on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Robert from Marietta, or as I like to say, Marietta, wrote in and said, here are some sights and sounds from the very well-attended 5th Annual Mayor's 5K on the 5th runway, hosted by Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms back on September 7th. And yes, that is her real name. About 2,000 people gathered early on a Saturday morning. No one fought. They all exercised. The world still turned when a runway at the world's busiest airport closed for a few hours. The 5th annual Mayor's 5K on the 5th runway, hosted by Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, returned September 7th. Metro Atlanta laced up their shoes, and I guess this must be a blurb from a press release that I'm reading. Anyway, it says that it's a special opportunity to race on one of the flattest and fastest courses in Metro Atlanta. This is a USATF certified 5K course, also a qualifier for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that's the newspaper in town, Peachtree Road Race, which I believe Steph just did this past year along with
I did it
Dispatcher
this
Mike.
year, and I've done it once before in the past, and I will tell you that's a great way to qualify and get a fast time for the Peachtree Road Race course, because that course is not flat.
It's not flat.
Not even close. No.
And okay, let's see. He took a little video, as he likes to do, and the first part of it is very, very windy, and so it's hard to hear, but you can see he was out on a runway, and there's usually nothing. Yep. Ooh, wow. Excuse me. To stop the wind from blowing, as they say. So let's hear from Robert, part one here.
Good morning, crew, from the 5th runway at ATL, doing the Mayor's 5K this morning. I put in the post there. This is the closest I've been to the 5th runway in a while. Not sure if Jeff or Dana have had a more recent visits to the 5th runway. So just started the walk here, and I think there is a 737 that Delta has parked down at the end. I can zoom in from here, I guess, for some photo ops towards the end there. But great morning, and wanted to send that over to you guys. Have a good week. Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. And the reason why the wind all of a sudden stopped, he went from the selfie camera to the forward facing camera. And I guess the position of the microphones on the cell phone were drastically enough of a difference to really cut down on that wind noise, which was kind of amazed.
He said he just set off on the walk. I mean, I thought it was a run. Is he walking this run?
You can
slash
walk.
walk.
Yeah.
You can walk.
No, I'm not sure
He's
if
out there doing a 5K. Doesn't matter how you get to the finish.
and I don't know if this is from I think that he took this video as well. I'm not sure. It looks like, looking at the link, it looks like it's maybe from the same account. But anyway, regardless, this is also something you don't normally see, or in our case here, on the 5th runway in Atlanta.
Photographers, look up, smile, get close.
Well, sound. They opened up the runway a little bit too early, and that was a Mad Dog that just over all of them on the runway. Kind of a mess. Sorry. Miscommunication.
Yeah. Whoops.
Anyway, that was pretty cool, I thought. So a little snippet of the high school band out there playing, and he also sent us some feedback, also from Robert. Good that I wasn't the only Av geek that enjoyed the TWA hotel at JFK like Dr. Steph did. I remember seeing Saarinen's work. Is that the way you pronounce the
Saarinen,
architect's name? Saarinen?
Yeah, I can never say his name correctly. It's Eero Saarinen, I think. But
Okay. For the first time at Dulles, I guess he was the architect of Dulles, apparently.
Yeah,
in the
a
terminal
large
there.
terminal there. Yeah.
And the smell he likely never intended. I think it was fried chicken and a sewage smell. Not sure what that means.
Yummy.
I thought
never mind.
okay. I thought it would never come back there again, but gave it another try. Pinched my nose, and I never regret it. There will never be another Dulles or TWA JFK terminal, and this documentary tells many of the reasons why, if you have a chance to watch it. Dulles reminds me of the 80s TV miniseries, V, The Visitors. I know I keep promising, but I will try to meet up with y'all soon. Safe travels. And then he has a link to this must be Amazon Video. Actually, I thought it was a link to his book about the architect, but perhaps it's a documentary as well. I don't know. So we'll have that in the show notes for you to check out yourself if you'd like. Okay.
Yeah, and I recently just saw this is not the architecture podcast, but oh man, it might have been the Smithsonian Channel on cable, had a blurb about him, or a short, probably hour-long special on the Sarnanen, because his father was an architect as well, and they designed some pretty cool things. So fascinating stuff if you're at all interested in it, and if you are, you probably already know all about them. But anyway.
Very cool. Getting close to the 2-hour mark. Let's try to fit one more piece of feedback in, and then we'll get on with the best part of the show, which, of course, you all know is the Old Pilot's Plane Tale. This from Ray down under, Ray Davis. G'day, everyone. Hope that you're all well. Here is a news article on the Travolta 707 transfer to the Aviation Museum in Albion Park, New South Wales. Albion. Thank you. New South Wales. I got the NSW part. He didn't spell that out.
Well done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As Dr. Steph would say, take care, you all.
Close,
you wouldn't
close,
say it that
right?
way,
We'll work on your southern.
You got to spell it y'all. Yeah,
y'all.
not you
It's one
all.
word. No OU. Just
Y apostrophe
ALL.
That's it. The news article to which he has linked us is from smh.com, whatever that is. High flyer Travolta to jet into Australia, but pricey gift is grounded. It was meant to be John Travolta's greatest gift to Australia, but plans for the Hollywood star to fly his once beloved Qantas Boeing 707 back to Australia in November have been thwarted, with the vintage airliner gathering cobwebs on an airfield in Georgia. Instead, Travolta will arrive in Australia empty-handed as he embarks on a national speaking tour. As a result, a band of eager plane spotters is trying to get through an enormous amount of red tape and maintenance issues to bring the big plane home. Looks like it's going to cost about $2 million based on their estimates to carry out the amount of repairs and maintenance required to meet all the requirements to get the aircraft back in the air. Former Qantas pilot John Dennis, who's overseeing the project on behalf of the Historical Aircraft Restoration Society, which ultimately wants to put the plane on display at its enormous facility near Albion Park.
Albion.
Dang it.
Dang it.
Dang it. Anyway, A Park. Capital A.
Yeah,
Travolta had reportedly blocked out a month of his filming schedule to allow him to travel on the plane and be part of its planned handover. However, these days, Travolta's availability was probably not going to be a major issue. Oh, that's kind of a wow.
That was rude.
He's not got a lot of work on.
Very
That's
rude.
not going to be a problem here. It's just calendars wide open.
Say
not really
what?
doing a whole lot, are you? Yeah.
Anyway, so it's somewhere south of where I live in Georgia, just waiting for somebody to spend the money on it, I guess, to get the thing back. Anyway, thought that was interesting. Thank you, Ray, for the update on the 707 that is going to be returned to its homeland, Australia. And with that, I think it is time for us now to do the best part of the show, which, of course, everybody knows. The Old Pilot's Plane Tales.
The Old Pilot's Plane Tales. Après-moi le déluge, Part 2.
This is London. The Air Ministry have just issued the following communique. In the early hours of this morning, a force of Lancasters of Bomber Command, led by Wing Commander G.P. Gibson, DSO, DFC, attacked with mines the dams of the Merner and Sauber reservoirs. These control 2/3 of the water storage.
In the previous tale about the Dam Busters raid, we talked about the life of Wing Commander Guy Gibson, who led the newly formed 617 Squadron on its first operational mission to attack the great dams of the Ruhr Valley. However, we've got a little ahead of ourselves, as the attack would never have come about had it not been for the genius of one man. Gibson describes the man as a scientist and very clever aircraft designer as well. He was neither young nor old, but just a quiet, earnest man who worked very hard. He was one of the real backroom boys, of whom little will be told until after the war, and even then, I'm not sure their full story will be told. The backroom boy was Barnes Wallis, a man who was one of 4 children, born to Edith Wallis and her husband Charles. Charles was a doctor, and they all lived in Ripley, Derbyshire, where Charles had his medical practice, despite contracting polio from one of his patients, which left him crippled. Barnes and his brother John had turned part of the house into a workshop, which may have given birth to his wish to become an engineer. A bright child, Barnes won a scholarship to a school called Christ's Hospital in Horsham, Surrey, a long way south from their home in Derbyshire. From there, he moved to a grammar school built by the Worshipful Company of Haberdashers. Although Barnes was a natural at mathematics, English, and science, he was completely incompetent at Latin. By the end of his successful education, he had decided that he wanted to be an engineer, a profession where a lack of skill with Latin wasn't really a hindrance. So, at the young age of 17, he was apprenticed to a shipbuilder on the Isle of Wight as a marine engineer, and he completed a degree course in engineering by the University of London. An opportunity came up for him to work at Vickers, designing airships, and along with John Temple, he led the way in airship construction, building the R-100, at the time the largest airship ever designed. His concept of geodetic construction gave the airship immense strength whilst ensuring a light structure, and harked back to the work done by Professor Shute, who built the airship LS-1 in 1909, a design which had also been explored by Joshua Humphreys in his use of diagonal structures in the construction of the first US Navy frigates in the late 1700s, and can be seen in the interior hull of the USS Constitution on display in Boston Harbor. Simply put, the design makes use of a frame formed by a spirally crossing basket weave of load-bearing members. The concept allows 2 geodesic arcs to intersect on a curved surface in a manner that cancels out the torsional load on each arc, giving great strength. The R-100 was a fantastic success and flew to Canada and back, but following the entirely avoidable crash of its sister ship, the R-101, built by the Air Ministry, the project was abandoned and the R-100 broken up. It was in 1922 that Wallis met Molly Bloxham. Wallis was a shy man and had never been in love until he encountered Molly. They met through his father's remarriage following the death of his wife, and Wallis took a shine to Molly immediately. Her father, however, did not approve of their courtship. Fortune, though, was on their side, as at the time Molly was struggling with mathematics as part of her degree course, and it was through mathematics that Barnes was able to continue writing to her. Her father decreed that the two could correspond only if Barnes taught Molly mathematics in his letters. What followed were a series of witty, tender, and totally accessible introductions to calculus, trigonometry, and electrostatic induction that remarkably wooed and won the girl. On St. George's Day, 1925, Barnes and Molly got married, and their union followed with 4 children of their own in addition to adopting Molly's sister's children when they were sadly orphaned following their parents' death in an air raid. The family lived in Effingham, Surrey, only a few miles from where I was raised. By now, Wallis had moved to the Vickers Aircraft Factory at Brooklands Motor Circuit and Aerodrome to work on pre-World War II aircraft. His geodetic construction was used in the Wellesley, the Warwick, and the Windsor aircraft, as well as the better-known Wellington bomber. Only the Wellington was to be built in any great number, and it was still operational at the end of the war and renowned for its ability to withstand substantial damage. During the structural testing performed at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, Farnborough, the proposed structure demonstrated not only the required strength factor of 6, but reached a factor of 11 without any sign of failure, proving that the geodesic design had a strength far in excess of normal levels. In parallel to his aircraft designs, Wallis saw a need for strategic bombing to destroy Germany's ability to construct their weapons of war. In a paper, he wrote, "If their destruction or paralysis can be accomplished, they offer a means of rendering the enemy utterly incapable of continuing to prosecute the war." As a means to achieve this, he developed a 10-ton super bomb. At the time, there wasn't an aircraft capable of carrying such a weapon, so in addition to his detailed work on the weapon, he designed a 6-engined aircraft that could carry it as well. The Victory bomber made it to the wind tunnel, but by then the Lancaster was being modified to carry these monster weapons, so this vast aircraft wouldn't be needed. His super bomb wasn't just a big weapon. The RAF already had those in the form of blockbuster bombs. It followed a different concept that Wallis had devised in that it had a very strong casing and a long, slim, ogival shape with an armored pointed tip that was designed to penetrate deep below the surface of the Earth. In this way, the resultant explosion would create an effect similar to a powerful earthquake by creating strong shock waves. As if that wasn't enough, the explosion created massive caverns below the surface known as camouflets, which caused the surface to firstly heave upwards and then collapse down into the space created, known as the trapdoor effect. The airmen who dropped these bombs reported that the target structures often stood undamaged by the detonation, but then the crater collapsed, the ground shifted, and the target collapsed. The bomb was dropped from high altitude and accelerated under the influence of gravity to near supersonic speeds. The Lancasters that carried the 10-ton weapon, known as Grand Slam, and the smaller 5.1-ton Tallboy, had to be specially modified, and after takeoff, the wings bent upwards 6 to 8 inches more than usual. What's more, upon its release, the Lancaster would usually leap 200 or 300 feet upwards. These massive bombs took time to construct, particularly since they were filled with hot, molten Torpex explosive poured by hand into the base of the upturned casing after melting it in kettles. The Torpex took a full month to cool, so precious were these bombs that, should a sortie be abandoned, the crew were told to bring the weapon back home rather than jettisoning it. When this occurred, the bomber would often have to divert to land at an airfield with a very long runway to accommodate their extra landing weight. This massive bomb could do remarkable damage to infrastructure that was previously considered untouchable. Some of the successful attacks were on such targets as the Saumur Rail Tunnel, where a Tallboy bored through 60 feet, that's 18 meters, of hillside to explode inside the rail tunnel, completely blocking it. Heavily fortified V-2 launch sites were rendered useless. bunkers destroyed, and U-boat pens covered with over 14 feet, more than 4 meters of reinforced concrete, were smashed open. The Nazi V3 guns, known as the London gun, which fired huge shells powered by rockets and accelerated by multiple charges inside the barrel, was housed inside a bunker within a hillside. It was destroyed by tall boys. 54 raids against the Schildesche Viaduct had no effect, but one attack with a grand slam completely destroyed sections of the structure. Perhaps the most famous target was the German battleship Tirpitz, hit by 3 tall boys, 2 direct hits and 1 near miss, that caused the ship to capsize immediately and subsequently explode when fire spread to a magazine. The death toll was over 1,000. The weapon that Barnes Wallis is best known for is, of course, the bouncing bomb, more correctly known by its code name, Upkeep. The dams of the Ruhr had been identified as an important strategic target even before the start of the Second World War. In addition to providing hydroelectric power and pure water for steelmaking, they supplied drinking water and water for the canal transport systems. Calculations indicated that attacks with large bombs could be effective, but required a degree of accuracy that was beyond the most sophisticated bomb-aiming systems. The size of the dams made them near impossible to destroy. They were constructed from concrete and steel, and the Ida was 3/4 of a mile, that's 1.2 kilometers thick at its base. Wallis knew that unless the explosive charge could be kept very close, preferably in contact with the dam wall, the water in between would cushion and disperse the force of the explosion. However, should a mine be detonated in contact with the dam, then the effect of the explosive would be amplified by the mass of water and reflected back as secondary shock waves with devastating effect. The Germans knew that the dams might be susceptible to attack and had wisely fitted torpedo nets to protect them. It was early in 1942 that Wallis began experimenting by skipping marbles over water tanks in his garden, leading to his paper, written in April that year, entitled Spherical Bomb Surface Torpedo. The idea was to ricochet or skip a bomb along the water's surface, avoiding the torpedo nets, until it came to rest directly against the side of a battleship, or in this case, a dam wall. There it would sink until, much like a depth charge, a hydrostatic pistol fired, setting off the explosive. The development of Upkeep and the actual attack on the dams of the Ruhr is a fascinating story, and will be told in the next tale or two. During the war, Wallis had been dispersed with Vickers Design Office from Brooklands to the nearby Burr Hill Golf Club. But when peace was declared, he returned to the main factory as the head of Vickers Armstrong Research and Development Department, and was based in the former Motor Circuit's 1907 clubhouse. Here, he and his staff worked on many futuristic aerospace projects, including supersonic flight and variable geometry wing designs. He designed and had constructed an enormous atmospheric chamber, then the largest in the world, called the stratosphere chamber. With a volume of some 40,000 cubic feet, over 11,000 cubic meters, by the use of vacuum pumps and refrigeration units, it could simulate the atmospheric conditions at 70,000 feet, where the pressure was 1/20th of that at sea level and the temperature down to minus 65 degrees centigrade. Many aircraft would be tested within this chamber, as well as marine vessels, guns, armored vehicles, radar heads, and the like. Even Arctic explorers made use of the facility to develop clothing for sub-zero temperatures. Along with his variable geometry wing designs, such as the futuristic Swallow concept tailless aircraft, he worked on laminar flow theory in both aircraft and underwater designs, such as the experimental rocket-propelled torpedo codenamed Heyday. In 1955, Wallis agreed to act as a consultant for the project to build the Parkes radio telescope in Australia. Some of the concepts he suggested were used in the final design, including the idea of supporting the dish at its center, the geodetic structure of the dish, and the master equatorial control system. Sadly, unhappy with the direction the project had taken, Wallis left the team halfway into the design study and refused to accept his £1,000 consultant's fee. In the 1960s, Wallis proposed using large cargo submarines to transport oil and other goods, thus avoiding surface weather conditions. Moreover, his calculations indicated that power requirements for an underwater vessel were lower than for a comparable conventional ship, and they could be made to travel at a much higher speed. He developed ideas for aircraft capable of efficient flight at speed ranges from subsonic to hypersonic, and his understanding of supersonic aerodynamics led to research that underwrote the variable geometry design of the air intakes for Concorde's Olympus 593 engines. His ideas were many and varied. A brilliant aircraft designer with a flair for what we might glibly call thinking outside of the box. He found solutions where others would shrug their shoulders in bewilderment. Wallis became a Fellow of the Royal Society and was knighted in 1968. He also received an honorary doctorate from the Heriot-Watt University. He was awarded £10,000 for his war work from the Royal Commission on Awards to Inventors, but his lasting grief at the losses that occurred in the Dambusters attack caused him to donate the entire sum to his alma mater, Christ's Hospital School, to set up the RAF Foundationers Trust, which to this very day allows the children of RAF personnel killed or injured in action to attend the school. There are a number of pubs named after this very British hero, and even a beer, the Amber Ales Barnes Wallis, described as an IPA-style bitter, fit for a local hero who once lived on Butterley Hill. Wallis lived with his family in Effingham from 1930 until his death on the 30th of October 1979. He was buried alongside Molly at St. Lawrence Church. On his gravestone is an epitaph written in Latin, a language he never mastered. Supernit humum vigiente penna. It is the motto of the Christ's Hospital Barnes Wallis Foundation and is taken from Horace. It reads, "Severed from the earth with fleeting wing." At noon on the day he was laid to rest, an Avro Vulcan bomber from 617 Squadron, the Dambusters, flew overhead as a mark of respect. Respect for a man that all the Allied nations owed a great debt of gratitude.
Very nice, very nice. I only have this Wallis guy was a pretty smart man, but I have a question, two questions actually. You said he was from Effingham?
He lived in Effingham.
Oh,
yes.
so that was
came from Ripley in
So
Derbyshire.
was that a bad place to live? Because you said sorry right after you said he was living in Effingham.
It's an old English word which we don't talk about anymore.
But you said Effingham, Surrey.
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 Oh, I thought you said
Surrey.
sorry. Okay.
You know, like sorry with a fringe on top.
And the other thing is, what is wrong with the darn walls out there? I don't understand what the angst is with the wall.
The wall? What?
Yeah, the damn wall. You keep. Ba-doom,
Very
bam.
good. Very good.
Where's my rim shot?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, another great plane
I
tale.
think
I'm
we need
sorry.
a vote out of a secret ballot. I think a secret ballot, please. Secret ballot.
Shut up. I have all the controls here.
Yeah, we better not say too much, Nick. Our jobs will be a jeopardy.
I think they're organizing a coup.
Oh,
Apparently,
he'll cut our paycheck.
and they're getting reinforcements. They were getting reinforcements. I see somebody
Help us
that's
out,
joined
Dana. Help us out.
joined the coup. Dana has joined us on the on the stream.
Is a newly qualified or recently requalified pilot, I think.
And you'll have to hang on. Let me see. Do I need to unmute you? There we go. Well, okay.
Well, I unmuted myself.
Oh, okay.
And then
I just
the
you're
host
just going to
has
let us
unmuted me.
You're just hanging. We're just hanging on your forthcoming words. Please,
Yeah, congratulations, Dana. Well done, mate.
Woohoo.
Thank you.
Oh, applause.
I'll fill everybody in on the. I'll fill everybody in on all the details that I've missed over the last couple of weeks in the next show. Let's keep you hanging like that.
Well, I'm glad that
because I don't want to interrupt the show at this point.
Yeah, we're trying to get as much of the feedback knocked out as we can. So, but we do look forward. Well, you can tell us a little bit. I mean, you feel relieved. You happy? You're good for another 9 months.
Does a bear poop in the woods?
A beer?
He does when he's relieved.
Oh, bear. Okay.
A beer. Not a beer like what's going into your
I
mouth
heard
right now as you're taking a sip of it.
When he's relieving himself.
Oh,
yes,
no, he's
okay.
drinking wine.
Yeah, I don't have any beer.
Beer.
Actually, I do.
In
the only
Nigel's
thing I have is
glasses.
water.
Oh,
Well,
well,
I'm drinking something else in celebration. It begins with a B, but it's not beer. It's bourbon.
Bourbon.
So, yes, it was an interesting experience. The first time in my entire flying career that I've had the FAA observe the APD, or the was it authorized? What's that APD stand for?
I don't.
I actually don't know. But he's the
designated.
designated examiner for the airline. So they have to be checked out every.
Yeah, it's awesome pilot dude.
Awesome pilot dude. Authorized pilot designee. I think that's what it is. Anyways, yeah. So he had to have his observation. Of course, there's I think 10 or 11 APDs in the department now, if even that many. So there's only 10 or 11 events the entire year that the APD has to get certified. You know, there's only 11 guys, so it's only once per year. So I, of course, drew the luck of the draw and had the FAA observing his certification or getting his certification while they the examiner examined us. So there was a lot less room for any mistakes or leeway, allowing for me to make no mistakes. And it went pretty. I'm pretty stoked. I mean, I can go into a lot more detail, but I'll leave it with it went very well.
Dana's being so modest. What he's not telling you is that in these situations, they want to pick the best of the best to be the people getting the check ride. So there's not going to be any issue whatsoever for the instructor pilot grading Dana. Right, Dana?
Yeah, I only wish that was true.
Oh, keep playing
Yes.
on this one.
Well, I do have to admit that the Glenn, who was the APD for the did I mention the airline earlier?
I don't think so.
No, okay.
You're good.
Acme, the APD for Acme, he is one of in the department, one of the coolest dudes. He's really laid back and realistic and down to earth. So I was fortunate to have him. But one of the things he did say when the lovely government official was gone, he said, there are two types of check rides that I like to give when I'm dealing with having the examiner examining me. And he said, either I like the pilots that have their proverbial stuff together, and they do a knock it out of the ballpark type of job, or the other is the people that are just completely well, that word I was just going to use, I had to stop myself. Screwing it up is the better way. Just where it's a clear cut, it's not a gray area per se, where it's either they're doing a great job, just get them done, or just axe them because they're just not doing a very good job at all. So fortunately, I was on the good end of the spectrum with a good FO. That we both did a very good job and knocked it out of the park. So
Very good.
really spent a lot of time preparing for it. Stressed me out beyond belief, and now I'm sipping on my first bourbon in relief of everything that happened over the past couple of weeks, because it was a lot of work.
Well, good. Well, we're glad you're here with us to share that, and look forward to
I'm
hearing
happy
more
to be
from what you've been doing.
I'm happy to be here as well, and I'm good for another 9 months. Well, at least until I go get my medical next week. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But that's not nearly as stressful as the government official watching over everything you're doing.
Okie dokie. Oh, and by the way, David Ogden in the crew in the chat room, the live show here. By the way, if you're listening to this and you have not ever joined us when we record this live, you really do need to, because the people that are here with us in the live chat room have a lot of fun and say a lot of derogatory things. So you'd really enjoy it. But and, even worse than what I get from my crew in the audio portion, believe it or not. But David, when I was saying that I didn't have any beer, I actually lied, because I just remembered that David did send me home from Chicago with some beer, and he told me I have to give you one of them, Dana.
I would love to have one. As a matter of fact, I do know somebody that has some other personal beverages.
I have that.
Seeking.
I guess I need to make a trip over there and deliver all your alcohol.
Or I can just meet you halfway.
Okay. Well, whatever. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out eventually.
Okay. Are you what's the name of that team that you like to watch on TV? The football team?
Who? The New England Patriots?
Yeah, that's it. Are they still doing that thing at the place just down the road from where I live?
They are, and I should be there Sunday.
Well, there you go. Maybe we can work something out on Sunday after.
I hope to be there Sunday. I've got some other interesting news I'll talk on a different show.
Okay. I'm hoping to be there as well. I'm supposed to be back from Baltimore on Sunday. So, okay.
No, you didn't say it right. Balmer.
I've never heard anybody say it like that.
Well,
okay.
that's what when I had my meetup there, that's what I was told. It's Balmer.
I stand corrected, and I mean I'm really standing.
Mayretta.
Roswell.
It's Mayretta.
Lana.
It's Lana.
Narlands. Louisville.
Narlands.
Okay. Moving on with a producer of the APG show, Paul, and he writes, not sure why this never occurred to me before, but I was listening to Joe Cocker's classic 1970 album, Mad Dogs and Englishmen, and couldn't help but think of your podcast. Not only does the album title immediately bring to mind APG, but it also includes the song Acme Lady and the letter. So it's Acme Lady, I guess. And the letter, which begins with the lyrics, "Give me a ticket for an airplane." Seems like there could be some kind of cosmic connection here. Yeah, I think he's right. The real reason I'm writing, however, is that I wanted to mention something I came across in my airplane spotting hobby. Back in July, I noticed that a Piper Comanche with a New Zealand registration had landed at our local GA airport, KRVS. This got my attention, as one does not normally expect to see in their own backyard a single-engine light aircraft from a country that is 7,000 plus miles away. What is KRVS? Anybody know? Somebody look that up while I'm talking. I Googled the tail number, Zulu Kilo Bravo Alpha Zulu, and was excited to find a very well-written blog detailing the adventures of Barry and Sandra, who are flying this aircraft around the world. The theme of the trip involves several 50-year anniversaries, including the 50th anniversary of AirVenture in Oshkosh. Perhaps you saw them there. I don't remember seeing them. Did any of you see the Barry and Sandra?
Did not. And
I don't remember, but KRVS
is Richard L. Jones Jr. Airport in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I beat you.
That's in the United States.
Ow.
Yeah.
For the rest of us.
Thank you. Yeah. Tulsa is something that you've not heard over there in the UK? Maybe not. Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I know the grass is as high as an elephant's ass or something.
Okay. No.
Oklahoma, the musical, and the
Oh, did I
grass
say
is
that
as
in
high
the-
as an elephant's eye.
Oh.
Oh, come on,
Sorry.
people.
The musical. I don't know all the words to the musical. Sorry. Okay.
Well, you're very sad.
I know I am. in more ways than you know. I'm gonna I'm gonna have a breakdown right now on the show. Okay. I imagine that flying a light airplane around the world is very challenging, especially given the starting point of New Zealand. But it sounds as though they are managing well as they currently make their way across Russia. I encourage anyone who is interested to check out their blog and to follow them on FlightAware or other such tracking service as they continue this exciting adventure. Speaking of adventures, congratulations to Dr. Steph on completing her quest to visit all 50 U.S. states. I absolutely loved the story and the telling of it as well. As a collector myself of states and airports and some other esoteric geographic entities, I could really identify with this story. So
thanks, Paul. It was a lot of fun. So.
And on more than one occasion, I've gone out of my way to include a state that was near but not on my route of travel, just to say I'd been there. Also, I have had the criteria discussion many times. I have a fairly liberal definition of what constitutes having been in a state, as this helps my tally a bit. But I do hope to get back to those states that I have passed through, but in which I did not actually put my feet on the ground. So just curious, Dr. Steph, for those states that you drove to on your trip, for example, Oklahoma, did you just pull into a parking lot somewhere and step out of the car and get right back in? Seems kind of silly on some level, and yet I understand completely and would do the same thing. That really was a fun story, and thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, the states I spent the least amount of time in were South Dakota, because I arrived there I drove from Fargo about 60 miles south at midnight just to cross the state border to say I'd been there. And also Mississippi. I flew into Memphis and drove across the border, got out of the car, took a picture with a sign that said Mississippi, and then drove to West Virginia from there.
So that's
So,
as much
the other
time.
states I all spent a little bit more time in.
You need to spend more time in Mississippi stuff. Come on.
Doesn't everyone?
Yes. I've spent a lot of time in Mississippi, actually.
I know you have. And I actually feel the same way. The criteria was just purely geographic. Like, have you been on that side of the state border or not? But I do plan to go back to a lot of those places too. A lot of things I want to see.
Okay. Maybe your honeymoon. Mississippi is a great place for that.
I need to drag us back up to 50%. I'm sorry, it's the corners as high as an elephant's eye, not the grass.
Oh, thank goodness. I was hoping that you'd correct yourself.
I was just assuming you were all growing grass nowadays.
I was embarrassed for you, but I didn't want to correct you on the show live.
Yeah, well, no, it's legal in some. I don't know, is growing grass legal in Oklahoma?
I don't know if it's there, but in a lot of places it is now.
Yeah, I mean, if it gets as high as an elephant's eye, it's pretty impressive.
So I think, are you talking about marijuana grass? Is that what you're talking about?
I just said grass. All I said was grass.
It's because in Georgia I can go grass. I can grow grass. But it ain't the kind you're talking about, fella.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm talking corn.
Because I have a hard time growing grass in my backyard.
Okay, moving on.
Not the recreational kind.
This is why we get so bogged down with
Tangent.
We just have fun talking.
I'm just smiling.
Oh, good.
And smoking.
Hey,
I wish.
This
I'm
next
drinking.
one, item number 6, is from APG community producer and APG show producer. Both. She's a double producer. Her name is Liz. Liz Piper. You may have heard of her. By the way, Liz is scurrying out of her house. We're seeing a lot of back chat conversation there because, well, she just needs to leave her house for some reason.
She's getting thrown out by her realtor.
Don't worry, everything is okay. It's not an emergency situation. Yeah, she's trying to sell her place, and the realtor is coming by with a client, and they said, we don't want anything to dissuade them from buying this property. So you need to get out of here.
It's not very nice, is it?
I know. I didn't mean
It's
to.
not at all. I think Liz would be,
Liz is going to kill
yeah,
me. I hope she's
she'd
not
be an
listening.
asset being there. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that she's not watching or listening to the show at this moment.
All of it.
Uh-oh.
I think HR's made a few notes.
She's still listening as she just sent a message. Sorry. You know, I love you. Okay. The title of her feedback is Toledo City Council approves airport name change. Okay. So why is Toledo such a dear place to Liz, dear to her heart? Well, it's because they're naming the airport for someone who she just loves. Let me read this. Toledo City Council on Tuesday voted unanimously to officially change the name of the Toledo Express Airport to the Eugene F. Kranz Toledo Express Airport. He was born in Toledo and graduated from Central Catholic High School. Now, all that's left is for the Federal Aviation Administration to authorize the name change. Gene Kranz was an iconic figure in the early space program, flight director to both Gemini and Apollo. He is best known for directing the successful efforts by the mission control team to save the crew of Apollo 13. He is also noted for his close-cut, flat-top haircut and the dapper mission vests of different styles and materials made by his wife, Marta Kranz, for his flight director missions. A personal friend of the American astronauts of his time, Kranz remains a prominent and colorful figure in the history of U.S. manned space exploration, the embodiment of NASA, tough and competent, of the Kranz dictum. Now, I've never, she ends, great to see he's getting recognition with the naming of the airport after him. I've never heard of the Kranz dictum. Have you all heard of this?
I have not.
No, I have not.
Okay.
It sounds vaguely rude.
Yeah. Dictum, D-I-C-T-U-M. Kranz called a meeting of his branch and flight control team on the Monday morning following the Apollo 1 disaster that killed Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. Kranz made the following address to the gathering, the Kranz dictum, in which his expression of values and admonishments for future spaceflight are his legacy to NASA. Spaceflight will never tolerate carelessness, incapacity, and neglect. Somewhere, somehow, we screwed up. It could have been in design, build, or test. Whatever it was, we should have caught it. We were too gung-ho about the schedule, and we locked out all the problems we saw each day in our work. Every element of the program was in trouble, and so were we. The simulators were not working. Mission control was behind in virtually every area, and the flight and test procedures changed daily. Nothing we did had any shelf life. Not one of us stood up and said, "Damn it, stop." I don't know what Thompson's committee will find as the cause. I guess they were doing an investigation of this. But I know what I find. We are the cause. We were not ready. We did not do our job. We were rolling the dice, hoping that things would come together by launch day, when in our hearts we knew it would take a miracle. We were pushing the schedule and betting that the Cape would slip before we did. From this day forward, flight control will be known by two words: tough and competent. Tough means we are forever accountable for what we do or what we fail to do. We will never again compromise our responsibilities. Every time we walk into mission control, we will know what we stand for. Competent means we will never take anything for granted. We will never be found short in our knowledge and in our skills. Mission control will be perfect. When you leave this meeting today, you will go to your office, and the first thing you will do there is to write tough and competent on your blackboards. It will never be erased. Each day, when you enter the room, these words will remind you of the price paid by Grissom, White, and Chaffee. These words are the price of admission to the ranks of mission control. Wow. Some strong words.
Only
amazing.
that
Yeah,
word
very strong.
should be reflected in more of our daily life nowadays.
Yes.
I
And
was just thinking maybe I need to write it in my office,
yeah, kidding. I mean, talking
Yeah.
about like, what's the thing today? So you're going to blame it on somebody else. Oh, it wasn't my fault. I had a bad childhood.
Yep.
Or whatever. No, this is like, we're taking responsibility. We screwed up.
Mhm.
And it cost the lives of 3 men. All right. Anyway, Toledo, thank you, Liz, for educating us on the Kranz.
Very good.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, they voted to change the name of the airport, and a little disappointed that they didn't name it for Jamie Farr. But oh well.
By the way, if you're making an approach, it must be quite hard because you're going to have to say, Eugene F. Cran Salado Express Airport approach. This is Acme 123. I mean, that's going to get a bit tedious after a
I
while.
think that we'll do the same thing that we do when we go into Little Rock. We don't say the Bill and Hillary Clinton International Airport Control Tower. This is Acme. You know,
You guys are so black.
On the Atlanta arrival, I have a problem even saying. I always have to say, "Hey, Larry."
Larry.
Hey, H. Larry.
Oh,
I can't say that name. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. We're not going to go into politics here.
No, we're not. I'm saying H. Larry.
I just say tower. That usually works.
Yeah. What you?
Yeah. Whoever's listening to my voice at this moment, clear me the land, please. So did you get my Jamie Farr reference? I think Steph probably did.
No, I actually didn't. I was scrolling through the article to see if I had missed something. I was like, what is that?
No.
I did not get it. I'm sorry.
He played Klinger on MASH.
Oh,
Klinger was
okay.
from
Sorry.
Toledo,
Yes.
Ohio.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, his character was. I don't know if Jamie is actually.
Who's got it?
Oh. I think this one should be read by the Honorable Captain Nick.
This is. Do I have to read it? Oh, this is quite long.
Or maybe no. Let me read this part, and then you can read your response.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, one of our recent episodes was entitled "There's No Such Thing as a Balloon Pilot," and I have to say that only one person on the APG crew expressed their feelings about this.
Thank you, sir.
And here we go. Hi, APGers, captains, doctors, and listeners. There are such things as balloon pilots. First of all, let me tell you, I really appreciate the wonderful APG podcast. I've been listening for a couple of years now, and it makes my long drives to work much more pleasant. And the fun thing is, I never speak to anyone about APG. And the fun thing is, I never speak to anyone about APG and listening to it every week. So in a way, you are my secret friends in which I share our common disease, APG syndrome. Wait a minute. Does that mean he's embarrassed to tell people that he listens to?
And certainly he's not increasing our listenership.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Definitely embarrassed.
Now let's throw this one away. I don't think we should read it.
Let's just move on to the next. No. We're going to continue. But near the end of episode 391, for the first time, I had to frown and shake my head while listening to the podcast when Captain Nick said some unfriendly things about balloon pilots. And he has a sad face. As I am both a fixed-wing pilot and a balloon pilot, let me tell Captain Nick a few things about ballooning. History learns us that the true pioneers in aviations, I have a feeling that MEL is not, English is not his first language, I believe. Or maybe just a bad autocorrection here. So let me say.
Or maybe he intended it that way.
Or maybe he did. As I am both a fixed wing pilot and as well as a balloon pilot, let me tell Captain Nick a few things about ballooning. History tells us teaches us that the true pioneers in aviation were balloonists. In 1783, Pellerin de Rosier became the first, not bad, to travel through the air, and thus the world's first pilot. In the hot air balloon made by the Montgolfier brothers, he made a short flight over the city of Paris, reaching up to 3,000 feet. But a year earlier, the first ever flying living creatures were a sheep, duck, and a rooster, making them the world's first test pilots. Didn't you do a PT about that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
This is actually old news, but if you go back to my plain tales, you can find out lots more.
Yeah, well, he's still trying to catch up. And by the way, I think I remember him saying he's from the Netherlands or something. So I think maybe there was something lost in the translation of your English humor.
Yeah.
Okay. And moving on, hopefully not getting you bored too much with my feedback, let me tell you something about the art of ballooning. I pretty much started my fixed wing training in the same period as my ballooning flight training back in 1994. And I can tell that even as easy as ballooning may seem, learning to fly a balloon at some points is much harder than learning to fly a plane. Much has to do with the enormous mass inertia of a balloon. A small balloon can easily have a capacity of 100 Now, is that 100,000 cubic feet? Probably.
Yes,
Meaning that-
100,000.
Okay, meaning that the effect or climb or descent of a burner blast from the basket only takes place 10 up to even 20 seconds after the blast, all depending on load, outside temperature. Once you've developed that specific feeling of the balloon's behavior, a balloon can be handled very precisely, up to inches when flying close to the ground. Now, as we don't have any means of controlling the direction of flight, we can use upper winds of directions.
They can only go
Oh, no.
up.
Wait, we're not arguing this anymore. Now stop. I'm trying to get this out of the way.
His piece here. He's gonna make a point.
Even small local weather effects can help steer a balloon. Okay, we can't make it rate one turns or fly from one airport to another, but that's the romantic aspect of ballooning. Yes, honey, it's romantic. Flying into the unknown makes every flight special and adventurous. On top of that, balloon pilots are excellent lovers. Oh, wait, no, meteorologists who depend a lot on their own observations. I'm just trying to read between the lines here. Nowadays, ballooning is an air sport with an excellent safety record, and commercial operators fly hundreds of thousands of passengers around the world, giving them the absolute best views from the sky. Wow, I didn't realize there were that many. And yes, Captain Nick, you do have to have a license to fly a balloon. Training is well organized, and you even need a commercial pilot license to fly a passenger.
A packet of cereal with your breakfast in the morning if you want. They come free.
Refresher courses as well as 2 yearly proficiency checks are mandatory. I guess I have to wrap up now. I don't really blame Captain Nick for his ignorance or unawareness about ballooning. So I have a challenge for him and invite him to come fly with me in my balloon and give him his first ballooning lesson. Captain Nick, hop over on the North Sea and pay a visit to our Low Countries. Fly with me in my balloon up and away and get that great feeling of ancient aviation.
Beautiful.
I hear a meetup coming. I hear a meetup coming.
You might find a great hobby for the years to come after your well-deserved retirement. Wishing you all the best. Oh, at the very end now, he's kind of trying to make it sweeter and not so bad. Wishing you all the best from the Netherlands. Keep the blue side up, tailwinds, and many happy landings to come. And this is from Emiel Achterberg, a balloon pilot.
Hey, Emiel, in your honor, Nick, I don't think you have any more landings left.
Great. And Emiel, I'd be too frightened that we'd end up in the North Sea if we your balloon. I did actually reply.
You didn't know how to swim.
You did.
I did reply to him.
What did you reply?
I said, thanks for all that. And I'm sure Jeff will enjoy reading it out on the show because he likes embarrassing me. But you did know I was pulling your balloon pilot's leg, didn't you? Yours, Captain Nick. P.S. I was right, though, wasn't I? You could only go up or down. P.P.S. I've done a few plain tales about aerostats, so I'm not quite as ignorant as I might seem.
Now, he's a relatively new listener.
He just plays it up for
a Yeah, when I read his email, I'm thinking, oh boy, Nick is going to get a kick out of this because, yes, Nick has done some very, very wonderful plain tales about balloon pilots. And I knew when he was doing that during the show, he was going to get some people upset with him. We never heard from Grant, did we?
No, we didn't. I was a bit disappointed because I was poking the bear there, and I thought
that's perhaps well played by either Grant hasn't listened to that yet, or it's well played by Grant because he knows that by not responding, that will make you even more.
I find it unusual that an Australian can't instantly react to a poke like that.
No, I'm really surprised. I even said, I think I sent something to Grant, or I said something in my tweet about the fact that that episode was being released, and I said in my tweet, I apologize personally to Grant McCarran for the title of the show. He's got a great sense of humor, so I'm sure that he'll come up with something funny in response.
But I'd like to thank Emil for coming back, because otherwise that whole episode would have passed unremarked, and it would have been a great waste of my time.
It was really great hearing from you, Emil, and we're not. I mean, I'm glad that you took it the wrong way, but now I think you understand. It was just our wacky, or his wacky English humor, I guess you could call it.
Half Australian, half English.
Yes, that. Yes.
It's English a sad combination.
Sad combination. I think, I don't know.
The way I understand, you started off as a Australian, and you ended up in an Englishman?
I'll
let you think about that for a second.
No, I was born in England, so I started off in England.
Forget about it. I'll explain to you in a private chat.
I don't get it either. So
not to worry.
Just explain it to all of us.
Your father is an Aussie, right?
Yeah.
And your mother is a English woman, right?
Okay. We're moving on.
Moving on.
All right, here we go.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Okay. Oh, Liz is still with us somewhere. She must be holed up somewhere outside of her home because she actually gave us the warning that we have 15 minutes left in our show. So I was just about to ask you guys, do you have any idea how much time we have left? But let's keep forging on with another producer of our show and also the guy who does our great introductions, radio, Roger Stern. He sent us some some audio feedback is what I mean to say. Okay, here we go. You're on. Oh, it's not anything that I did wrong. It has to be. It has to be Roger that did something wrong. Sorry, Roger.
Roger forgot to press your buttons.
Greetings, APG crew. This is Radio Roger. My feedback concerns a flight my wife took from Los Angeles to New York on Acme, or on a very similar airline. To set the scene, the flight was late pushing back from the gate at LAX because of delays at JFK, so there was clearly pressure on the crew to take off as soon as possible. While the plane was still on the ground, the woman sitting next to my wife turned and asked, "Is this flight going to Los Angeles?" A disturbing question since the flight was leaving LA. There were other oddities in what she was saying. She continued to express concern about her carry-on luggage, despite repeated assurances that it was tucked away by the bulkhead behind her seat. My wife, worried enough about this woman's mental state, flagged down a flight attendant. The crew then escorted this lady to the back of the plane for a discussion. After that, the decision was made, I assume by the captain, to return to the gate even though they were running late and take the woman off the flight. My question to the APG crew is, have you ever had to remove a passenger who may be disoriented or emotionally or mentally disturbed but was not creating a problem for others? How would you handle such a situation? And do you have a mental health professional on call, just as you have a physician on call in case of a medical emergency? Anyway, thought it was an interesting subject. This is Radio Roger, over and out.
Honestly, Roger, I thought you were going to ask us if that was Dr. Steph. That apparently not. That wasn't. So
I was the one being removed from the aircraft.
yeah. Is it sometimes Steph enjoys her beers a little bit too much? Let's just say.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
I've never had the situation. Dana probably has because it's all kinds
I've
of
had everything
issues like
so
this.
far. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I've never had anybody like crazy having to be removed from any of my flights. Dana, have you?
No, I mean, as far as a psychological crazy, I haven't had to have that discussion with anybody as of yet, fortunately. However, certainly the belligerent passenger referencing certain apparatuses on a person's body.
How about somebody who's crazy good looking?
Well, yeah, well, they take me off the airplane all the time. What are you talking about?
I don't know.
Oh, no, you're saying crazy good looking. I'm sorry. You're not referring to me. No, I haven't. You know what? The only two instances so far have been those two alcohol. I want to say, I was going to say alcoholic, but that's not probably the right term. Alcohol related situations that they were removed. So that's it.
So I don't
far.
know. I don't think we have anybody on our staff that
No.
is like a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, or whatever.
I think we would convene the security team on that one,
Right.
Jeff. I mean, that would be my guess.
Right. That's what I would say as well. Nick, do you recall? I know it's been a while since you've flown as a pilot for an airline, but do you recall anything about your career?
No, he's completely senile at this point. Can't remember a thing.
You're equating me to a goldfish, are you?
I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. Do you know anything about the behind the scenes kind of things that might be going on at at your old airline Virgin?
No, I don't recall us having a particular expert in that field available to us. The few occasions we've had people who have been a bit odd, it's often turned out to be illegal substances they've consumed and not a genuine mental problem. If it happens on the ground, and you think there might be a danger to themselves or unable to behave themselves during the flight, that's the easy decision. You just go back to the gate. And more importantly, you have them assessed by someone, and then you can make a decision whether they can subsequently fly on the next airplane. If it's in the air, then the general feeling is unless there's a problem, you carry on, because you're going to create more hassle by turning around than you would if you just plowed onto your destination. But no, the few times that it has happened, it's often something like we've got deportees who do some really weird stuff. And that's generally speaking to get themselves thrown off the airplane so they will end up being deported. But there you go.
You know what? And I tread lightly on this because it is a sensitive topic. But the thing that would come to my mind on that would be anybody that's coming with these social. That's probably the wrong word. Not social. The pet. The what's the word I'm trying? You know what? I'm actually really tired. I've been up since about 4:30 this morning. So, the emotional support animals just came to me. So, that's showing that there's more of an issue out there. I don't know if it's really people trying to skate around the system or whether those people are, I am not a person to judge. My father would have been, because that's what his profession was. He was a psychologist. But maybe there's more of a social issue nowadays because of there's a new norm. So I don't know, but I can see, some of these people we've reported on it in the past, and talking about, I think it was a little horse that was recently on the show. We're talking about
If you like yell and scream too much.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And these pets that come on as emotional support animals that like to bite people. I mean, there's all types of issues that are being created because of this, and I don't know if those people are truly. And again, I say this and I proclaim this. I am not a professional, so I don't know, and I can't say that whether people are crazy or not crazy. But there are a lot of people in observation that are now traveling with these service animals that may or may not be insecure.
I think most of the cases of those are just people trying to transport their pets and not pay anything for the service, I'm guessing.
Well, that would be my guess as well. But again, I mean, I'm not in a position to make that judgment.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, we can act, we can have our personal opinions on it, and certainly it's more than likely the case that you're saying, Jeff. However, I think realistically, there's a trend towards a lot more social instability. I'm seeing it, especially with people coming up that the only thing they know how to socialize is with a phone or a computer or a TV set with playing games. So I see where that's starting to come into play. That's really what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's not more instances of this.
If you don't mind, hang on. I need to finish this game on my phone. I don't actually play games on my phone. Okay. Thank you all for your input. Hopefully that answered your question, Radio Roger. Anything else before we move on to Tim? Actually, Ramiro. Sorry. Skipping. Okay. Item 9. Ramiro. Questions for Captain Nick.
Uh-oh.
First of all, my first question, why did Captain Jeff ask you to be a host on the show?
You'll have to ask Captain Jeff that.
No, I'm just kidding. Because he's
world
brilliant.
may never know.
Brilliant. No, he says, I hope everyone is doing well. For this feedback, I was hoping to ask Captain Nick a few questions. He does such a great job with his plain tales and has done a few where he interviews interesting people. I would like to turn the tables on him if he will indulge and ask him the questions this time. Ask
Sorry,
him.
no press. No press.
Okay, sorry. Item 1. During your airline career, did you fly any other aircraft types besides the A330 and the A340?
No.
I've been listening. Okay. I'll move on to the next one. I have been
Moving on.
listening to podcasts for more than 2 years now and have not heard you mention flying any other type. Okay, now you can answer.
No.
Okay. 1B. If your airline career had gone in a different direction and you ended up coming out of the Air Force and been hired to fly the 777 or 747, would you be a fan of Boeing aircraft, or is there something about them that you truly dislike?
No, I think, as I've said before, as a professional pilot, you put on the uniform you're given, you fly the airplane in front of you. It really doesn't matter. I'm sure after a while you get used to anything. So I eventually got used to Airbus, and I think partly because you're now familiar with it, you feel more comfortable with it, and you're happy to say this is a great airplane. But never having
Just like
flown a Boeing, exactly. Never having flown a Boeing, I wouldn't really know what a Boeing's like. So, I profess an opinion, but that's it. It's a biased opinion.
Boing, boing, boing.
Boing, boing,
And,
boing.
and that is very true, Nick. I mean, look at Jeff and I. Jeff has flown. You've only flown 3 airplanes at Acme, right? You've only
Yes.
flown the L10, the 72.
You've got more than 3 airplanes.
and
Oh,
the
I see
Mad
what you
Dog.
mean. Sorry, yeah.
Right. So, and
Yeah.
I actually love the Mad Dog, but truthfully, that's really all I've ever flown at Acme. And I've heard that a lot of my distinguished gentlemen friends have told me that the
You've got gentlemen friends?
I do actually. I'm certainly not a gentleman. I never respond to that. So I'm not a gentleman.
I know your
so
friend.
that's why I had to put
Yeah,
that
no
out there. That there's a much better life on the other side, both in the quality of life, in the type of flying that we have available, and also the ability and usability of the equipment. I mean, you get to know the idiosyncrasies of the equipment that you fly, and thus you become very comfortable with it and tend to like it far more.
Excellent. Item 2. Actually, this is question number 3. He's trying to squeeze an extra question in there. But,
I noticed that. Yeah, he's cheating.
Ramiro.
He's cheating, for sure. HR will be contacting you. Now that you have been retired for a while, what is what? Okay. Now
What
that
is the number
What is
one
the number
thing?
one thing you miss about being an airline captain?
Okay, am I misreading something here, or are you
Yes.
just
Now that
okay.
you have been retired for a while, what is the number one thing you miss
Oh,
about
it is.
being an
Thank you.
airline captain? Yeah, gotcha.
What is the number one thing you miss about being an airline captain? Steph
Getting
said-
off the airplane.
Getting off the airplane. Okay. What is the one thing that you do not miss about being an airline captain?
Everything else.
So basically, you didn't like any of it.
That's a
True.
lie.
That's true.
No.
Nick, why is
Lies.
your nose growing?
Lies.
You have a big nose now, sir.
Oh dear. What's the number thing I miss about being an airline captain? I guess
Paycheck.
miss the money. It is I still think now it's a highly respected job, and it was always nice to meet people, particularly when you're going to work, who like to come up and go, "Hi there, Captain." And it's often, you go to a place like Lagos, and there'd be some chap cleaning the floor, and he would look up and say, "Oh, hello, Captain," and they would. You could tell if you spent a few moments chatting to them and just said, "Oh, hi, how's he getting on," etc. You kind of felt like you had they were very pleased that you'd acknowledged them, because the big almighty captain took time to talk to me, and I'm just a floor cleaner. That kind of doesn't actually really say that very well. It makes it sound a bit arrogant, and I don't mean it to be that way. But there is an element of pride in doing the job. When you got 4 stripes, it's very nice to be able to receive an element of admiration, and to try and get along with everyone and make everyone feel like they're part of the team that are helping you get the aircraft off the ground. And
That's
I've
part of
always
just
enjoyed
great.
that.
a great commander, a good leader,
Yeah.
and not everybody does that, or can.
You
Doesn't
bring
have it.
everyone else along with you.
Right.
You raise up those around you when
You know
you're
what?
given the opportunity.
That is actually part of airmanship, I think.
Mhm.
It's part of the whole thing. Yeah, I think you're right. The one thing I don't miss, sticking my hand in the greasy hole. We had a little locker on the floor of the Airbus where we used to keep the gear pins, and it was the captain's job to put his hand in this greasy hole and fumble about until you found all 4 pins. And by the time you put your hand out, it was black with grease. So, yeah, that was the bit I didn't like very much. We had to do it because it's the captain's job to make sure all the pins are out.
Wow.
Okay.
Glad that's not a job for me.
Sticking your hand in the greasy hole, yeah.
Makes the coal burning seem a whole lot cleaner.
It does, doesn't it? And when I pulled my hand out, I used to say fork handles, because that's an old reference to the sketch with Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett, where they play lots of tricks, verbal tricks in each other about fork handles. So
I remember that.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. I'll just make this very quick because I know we're over the 3-hour point at this point. This is from Tim Kern, and he sent us a link to something. And many people who fly airplanes are also talented in other ways. And one of those ways for some of us is music. And many pilots out there, the good ones anyway, are musicians.
Now, the trumpet isn't a musical instrument. We know that. It's just something you stick on your car to let people know you're coming.
Especially the trumpet players. They're probably the most talented pilots out there ever. And anyway, so he sent us a link to this thing. It's called the Flying Musicians Association, celebrating 10 years. And they, let's see, the Flying Musicians Association recognizes the correlation between hard work and skill required by both learning and to fly and learning music, practice, precision, working with others, multitasking, and ultimately performance. And to that end has opened the floor to nominations for the 6th year to passionate student musicians for the 2020 FMA solo program. The program has averaged 2+ scholarships per year in the first 5 years while welcoming nearly 200 new student members into the FMA network. And so basically they have a scholarship, and the application for the scholarship closes, I think, at the end of June. I'm sorry,
January 31st.
Thank you. January of next year. And so if you are a student musician and you want to get a scholarship did you read through this stuff? Is it only to be accepted into a college program that is for flying, or does it matter? I have a feeling it makes.
I don't know that it matters.
Yeah.
It says the assist student members grow through aviation and music. The program
They
has
have to have a passion for
soloed
both.
9 students with 2 in the wings.
Yeah.
So, and now many additional private pilots that have come from this program.
Right.
I don't know that it has to be
I think they would prefer that, but if you have a passion for flying and a passion for music, and you want some money to go toward your college education, which is important, I think that you should check this out. And it's also being sponsored by some companies that you may have heard of: Bose Aviation, Sporty's Pilot Shop, amongst other, Gleim Aviation, Hartzell Propeller, ForeFlight, Honda Power Equipment, and Sensonic Propellers, Aeroshell. Anyway, there's a lot of great sponsors for this scholarship. So if you're interested, just check out the show notes and apply. There you go.
Very cool.
And just don't mention the Airline Pilot Guy show anywhere in the.
You won't get
Yeah.
in if you do. They don't.
That'll be
blacklisted there for sure.
Yeah, black bulb. Okay, that is it for today's show. Unfortunately, we didn't get to everything, but almost. So next time we're going to start with Ed, talking about the Cessna 500 crash, Mike, a Canadian short film featuring women pilots, Ben, Carter, Gustav, Stephen, and maybe you. So if you want to send us feedback, send it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. Head over to our website where we have a contact us page, and you can send us feedback that way if you'd like. Also a link to SpeakPipe where you can record something for us if you don't want to use your recording app on your device, and send it as an attachment to the email to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. And we are on social media.
We are. You can head over to Twitter, twitter.com, just twitter.com, and @APG Crew is the handle that you want to use to find us there. You can also head over to facebook.com/ in this case, Airline Pilot Guy. Lots of good ways to interact with us on either platform, and we really hope to see you there.
Absolutely. And we're also on Slack.
Sorry, Jeff, I might have used all your skin lotion.
Hello. Come on out of the bathroom, come over here and tell us about Slack.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and plain tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack. Oh yeah, Delta P.
All right. Thanks. Hello.
That man is no worry. Curiosity at this point.
Can't help but laugh.
Look forward to seeing you, Hillel, tomorrow. And with that, anything else? Oh, thank you, Liz, for continuing to be our producer, even under terms or situations where people are kicking you out of your home. And we do appreciate all the hard work that you do behind the scenes. People just never know how much she does to help us out and to make us look as good as we possibly can.
We could not do this without you.
Yeah. And with that, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Talons, Douglas.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great time. Bye-bye.
Brilliant.
Wow.
No, wow. Wow.
You don't even sound as good as yourself.
I know your sound clip sounds better than you do. Here, let's try that again.
Wow. Wow.
Well, that sounds almost
No, that's
identical.
pretty similar. Yeah.
How late is it, Steph, for you?
It is 1:12 in the morning.
Where are you?
That's nothing.
Same.
Wow. Wow.
Is in San Sebastian.
San
Is that what you said?
Huh?
And,
Yes, you'll be feeling it right now, I suspect, Steph.
I'm pretty tired right now, but
good for her. Oh, you mean
Steph, I can relate right now.
yeah. Well, I've been up since 7 this morning, so
That's not bad.
but I don't feel jet lagged. I'm just tired, like I need to go to bed.
Good idea.
Stop the
I know how
recorders.
that goes.
Great idea.
And my recorder's still recording.
Oh.
Yay!
Hooray for a change.
After the catastrophe last week, which turned out not to be a catastrophe, I bought two 128 gigabyte cards.
Woo!
And they were pretty cheap. It's amazing
Really?
how cheap memory is now. That $30 for a 128
Really?
card.
Can't
Now,
be
if we
very
can just
fast.
plug it into our old heads.
Oh, these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm starting to forget stuff left and
Oh,
right.
these are good cards, Nick. They're SDXC. I think that they're the highest. They're the fastest.
Really?
the fastest,
Okay, well,
yeah.
that's cool.
They had some
Wow,
kind
that
of
is
sale
good.
going on Amazon, and thought, ooh, that's not bad at all. So I bought two of them. So one for the main and one for the backup. So I have 54 hours left on the main one and 130 something on the backup. So
Well, that is good.
long time, which is a bad thing because I'll probably forget. I'll just
Yes.
assume that the card is going to last forever, and then I'll do what I did last episode and forget to check to see if they have stuff on them. Anyway, stuff that you don't really care about.
Stefano? No, he's not on this one. Stefano. Sorry, it sounded like you said Stefano.
Oh, yes.
Wasn't
No, they're
wasn't
not
very
micro,
funny.
Glenn,
Sorry
they're
about that.
just regular SD, not micro SD cards.
I clicked out of the chat prematurely. I'm sorry, but
Oh.
good night to everyone in the chat room. Yeah, it is embarrassing. I hate when that happens.
You don't know.
I was going to say so many things. I'm shutting up.
Yeah. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. Yeah. So I guess we can go ahead and say thank you to all of you who are
Well
with
done,
us.
everyone.
Live chat
Bye-bye.
is who all is still there? I don't know. I can't tell.
Glenn's there.
Glenn's
Stephanie
still-
Plummer's there.
Lane's
Stephanie.
there. Glenn's
Lane,
there.
yeah.
AJD. Laura Davis.
Chris.
Dave
David
Ogden.
Ogden. Yeah. Kirk
Chris,
Kelly Kirk. sorry.
Hamish. Hey, Hamish.
Hey,
There's
Dick.
Hamish.
Good to see you, Dick.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
Hey,
you're watching
I'm
right
sitting
or not.
right here, okay?
Jack English.
There's even
Hi,
a
Jack.
Nick Anderson in there.
Woo.
Never
All
heard of
right.
that guy.
Well,
Ciao.
thank you everybody for hanging in there with us and supporting us and just being part of our community. You guys are great. We guys and gals, we love you all and we hope to see you again soon. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye and end the broadcast. Bye-bye.
So long.
Peace
Thanks
out.
for
The fish.